Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. President Trump is hosting Argentinian President Javier Milei at the White House right now. The meeting comes as Milei faces market turmoil and prepares for midterm elections in Argentina. Will the first round of missed paychecks pressure lawmakers to reopen the government? Senators return to Washington as the shutdown enters the 14th day. What is President Trump's overall approach to peace on the world stage? How does it differ from previous administrations? We discuss this with an analyst. House Speaker Mike Johnson will be helping secure more nominations for President Trump to give the Nobel Peace Prize. What the Speaker has to say about the Gaza peace deal. Attorney General Pam Bondi says Facebook has removed a page used to dox ICE agents in Chicago. She says social media campaigns are driving a wave of violence. A glimpse at the economic outlook. Without government data, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell shares his insights with the information that is available.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. Hamas terrorists tightened their grip in Gaza today after carrying out public executions. The terrorists executed men they accused of collaborating with Israeli forces. Gaza residents said the terrorists were increasingly visible today, deploying along routes needed for aid deliveries. Palestinian security sources say dozens of people have been killed in clashes between Hamas fighters and rivals in recent days, and Israel's military says it has identified the bodies of 4 deceased hostages that include Nepali national Bipin Joshi and Israeli citizen Guy Aluz, who was taken from the Nova Music Festival. 2 others remain unnamed at their family's request. The army says Hamas is still holding the bodies of 24 hostages. And President Trump is having a bilateral meeting with Argentine President Javier Milei at the White House right now. Let's take a look at that.
About you as you were running and even before you were running, because as a tremendously talented economist, you were getting a lot of good write-ups, and I appreciated that. But he was make Argentina great again. It worked. I actually sent him some hats for his early part of the campaign, and then he called me. He wanted a lot more, and I said, "When does it stop? When will it stop?" And it stopped with him winning, and he's become very popular, and he's on the verge of a breakthrough. I think he's really on the verge of tremendous economic success, and I know that Scott Bessent is helping, and our great Scott is doing a job, and he feels very strongly about it. And Scott, do you want to say just a couple of words about that, please?
Yes, sir. The president is fighting 100 years of bad economic history and policy, and is
Both presidents.
Both.
We're fighting bad. I thought he was talking about the U.S. president when he said
And there's a midterm election coming up. We think he's going to do quite well and then continue his reform agenda. Mr. President, as you said, President Obama had a big opportunity during his term, which he wasted. Many governments in Latin America went center-right, and the U.S. ignored them. We are not going to ignore our allies. It is economic strength. We're using our economic strength to create peace, just as you've done all over the world. And it is much better to form an economic bridge with our allies, people who want to do the right thing, than have to have shoot at narco gunboats. So we think that this is an opportunity for the Argentinian people, and that President Milei is the one to do it. He's got a great cabinet. He's got a great team who we've worked with over the past weeks.
And the election is coming up very soon, and it's a very big election being watched by the world, because he's done an incredible job. But with that comes some pain. And they have some pain, and now they're coming out of it. I think the victory is very important. Your poll numbers, I hear, are pretty good, but I think they'll be better after this. And, you know, our approvals are somewhat subject to who wins the election, because if a socialist, or in the case of New York City, a communist wins, you feel a lot differently about making an investment, I think, Scott, you'd feel that if somebody that had no chance, in other words, if somebody wins and has no chance of ever having a great economy because of that philosophy, you would put a halt to what we're doing.
Yes, sir, and we're confident that President Milei is going to do well. We've been criticized by a couple of American Peronists, like Senator Warren. And you know, she and
That's a compliment.
Yeah.
She has no idea what she's doing. She's a nasty, horrible senator. Go ahead. Other than that, I like her very much.
Yes, and she and her protege in New York, Mandani, who I don't even think he's a Peronist. I think he's more the communist Chavismo. So we stand with the president and what he stands for and the hope for the Argentinian people. And President Trump, just like you, he carries the young people. So it's hope for the future. The Argentines have made the decision to shake off 100 years of bad policy. They went from one of the richest countries in the world to a ton of debt. And I think that with the bridge the U.S. is giving them and the strong policies, that Argentina can be great again.
Thank you very much. Please, go ahead, please.
Muchísimas gracias por esta recepción. Me siento muy honrado, muy especialmente en este momento en el que, digamos, gracias al gran liderazgo suyo, presidente Trump, ha logrado la paz en Medio Oriente. No solo este gran logro que ha sido alcanzar la paz en Medio Oriente, sino lograr el retorno de los 20 rehenes vivos. Además, quiero también felicitar por esa labor y por entender, digamos, la amenaza que es el socialismo del siglo XXI en todo el mundo, y en especial en América Latina, la labor de Marco Rubio. Y también quiero agradecer profundamente el enorme trabajo que ha hecho el secretario Besen, digamos, para ayudar a superar este problema de iliquidez que tenía Argentina como consecuencia, digamos, de los ataques políticos que hemos sufrido por nuestros opositores que no quieren que Argentina vuelva a abrazar las ideas de la libertad y que quieran volver a abrazar ideas perimidas, fracasadas, que en el fondo no son ni más ni menos que caminos que conducen al socialismo. Así es que, en primer lugar, muchas gracias por recibirme, muchas gracias por lo que están haciendo por el mundo libre y muchas gracias al secretario Besen por la enorme tarea que ha llevado a cabo y que, digamos, nos permite tener una ruta para poder transitar tranquilos y hacer lo que los argentinos de bien necesitan, y que creo que va a ser un buen caso para mostrar al mundo que las ideas de la libertad funcionan y generan prosperidad. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much. Do we have a interpreter that wants to, you all either have that, has everyone understood? Because I think you made a very important, profound statement, actually. But we could have it interpreted if you want. Does anybody want it interpreted? Would you like that? Would you like it? Can the interpreter speak what, do we have somebody set up for that? You want?
It's actually simultaneous, so if the president would like to repeat his statement, we can do it.
No, that's okay. Don't worry about it. We'll leave it that way. So it's an honor to have you here. And I just want to tell you that your career has been an amazing one, and it's going to continue with the election. You're going to win the election. We're going to endorse you. I'm going to endorse you today, fully endorse you. And people in Argentina like me. A lot of people like me. I'm even surprised myself. But we had a great week. We had a great weekend. We had a great period of time in the Middle East. It was very comprehensive. It went very rapidly, and I think it's going to lead to something that's going to be unrecognizable, certainly for the Middle East. What's taken place in the last few days, people can't believe it. I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen the love and the spirit. and I've done a lot of things. I've done a lot of deals. I've done a lot of political deals where countries come into line or whatever, but I've never seen anything like this, the level of love. And it has to do with the mystique of the Middle East, I think, because if I did other countries, I did 7 other settlements of wars, complete settlements of wars, and it was very well received. But this is something I've never seen anything like it. The media covered it very fairly, and even the fake news, of which we have a lot, they actually covered it fairly for a change. And I appreciated that. We have to get back to that. It's so important. But I just want to say it's a pleasure to be with you, and we're going to have lunch, and we'll take a couple of questions from the news, and I'm sure they'll be extremely non-hostile and friendly. Like JD went through a very friendly interview with George Slopadopoulos, who was nice enough to pay me $16 million the last time we came. He had to pay $16 million to me, which was good. It was worth having somebody lie. If you get $16 million, that's good. But JD had a very nasty person interviewing him, and we can't let that happen. Just as inappropriate to cut off a highly respected vice president of the United States mid-sentence. I guess it's one way to win an argument. That was the only way he was going to win the argument. So it was pretty inappropriate, I want to tell you that. So thank you very much. Do you have something there?
Yes.
Oh, good, thank you.
Sí. Quería
Yeah,
darle.
I'll get it. That's fantastic. Thank you very much.
And when he did this letter, Mr. President, your settlement in the Middle East wasn't done. So we have to do a new letter
Let's do it.
to include that, because this is a very important.
You'll have to add one extra sentence.
Exactly.
That's great. Thank you very much. This is a great, such a beautiful statement. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Okay.
Mr. President, how is this Argentina?
Why don't we talk about Argentina first? And then-
Yeah.
Go ahead. How is Argentina
Are
going?
you worried
President,
about the
how is this
influence of China in Argentina? Sorry.
Go ahead.
How is this Argentina rescue package America first? And is this rescue package meant to help President Milei's party in the coming election?
No, it's really meant to help a good financial philosophy where Argentina can, after 20 years of disaster, because it was very successful at one point, and it can be again, like Venezuela. Venezuela was very, very successful, and now it's a dictatorship. So when we can help our neighbors, we're making tremendous progress in South America. South America, Marco was telling me, he's like our great expert here. He really knows it. You were telling me that so many of the countries are coming our way. And we had, a few years ago, when I just came back, so I've been here now almost 9 months, but when I just came in, I was amazed to see how poorly we've done. We lost so many, and one of them was Argentina, would be lost if he wasn't there. And I think he will be there because the people recognize he's done an amazing job. He took over a real mess. So did I take over a mess. I took over a mess by, the Biden group. And Obama he started it, I'll tell you. Barack Hussein Obama started it. Could you give a couple of words on South America? You were telling me so well yesterday how well we're doing. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, we have now 8 or 9, 10 countries, Argentina being foremost among them, that have aligned with the United States on issue after issue in international community events all over the world. They're, in fact, these great allies like Argentina, but I can go into others, Costa Rica, I don't want to leave anybody out, El Salvador, but I think one of the more promising developments is later this month, there'll be an election in Bolivia after 25, 30 years of anti-American hostile government. Both of the candidates running in that election, in the runoff election, want strong and better relations with the United States and another transformative opportunity there. But so I think this is important. This is our hemisphere. It's where we live. And having strong neighbors such as this.
And great progress has been made, really.
And we'll make more.
Over
Absolutely.
the last 9 months. Really over the last 9 months. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, from Argentina, Buenos Aires, do you imagine soon a free trade agreement with Argentina? Could it be possible soon?
Yeah, it will be. Well, we're going to discuss some of it today, but no, we want to help Argentina, and we want to always help ourselves, but we want to help Argentina. And one of the ways we can do, they have great product, and we used to do a lot of trade, and then if you look at what the Democrats, well, they didn't know. They didn't know. Honestly, they didn't know what they were doing. But a lot of that trade disappeared, and they have great product. So we will be trading with Argentina, and it'll be helpful to them, and it's helpful. It's good for us also.
Mr. President, was China trying to draw a wedge between the U.S. and Argentina by buying soybeans from Argentina and not U.S. farmers?
I would say so.
And China on the port fees.
China
they've
likes to
increased
draw
port fees on
wedges.
U.S. ships too.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess that's natural. It's China, and it's natural, but it's not gonna mean anything in the end.
Mr. President,
Mr. President,
Mr.
from
President.
Argentina, should Argentina end the China swap and close the space base in Neuquén?
I don't think you should be doing business much with. You can do some trade, but you certainly shouldn't be doing beyond that. Certainly shouldn't be doing anything having to do with the military with China. And if that's what's happening, I'd be very upset about that. Yeah.
And what about
You
the
understand
swap?
that's good, right?
Mr. President,
You do understand.
Mr. President, what about the swap? Because it's so important for Argentina, the swap.
Go ahead.
The central bank.
The American assistance is not predicated on the swap with China being closed. Any reporting to that effect is incorrect.
But you said, sorry, but you said that Argentina has to expose China from your business or from your agenda, and the swap is so important for Argentina.
No, I was referring more to ports, military bases, observation facilities that have been created in Argentina.
Than the swap? More than the swap?
More than the swap.
Mr. President.
He was referring to that. Yeah, behind you, please.
Yes, President, for Argentina, what's the benefit for United States in helping this way Argentina?
Just helping a great philosophy take over a great country. Argentina is one of the most beautiful countries that I've ever seen. And we want to see it succeed. Very simple. I mean, we don't have to do it. It's not going to make a big difference for our country, but it will in terms of South America. If Argentina does well, you're going to have others following, and a lot of others are following. You have countries in South America that 2 years ago would have never even been thought of to go as democracies or as just countries that want to do fair and balanced trading. And now you mentioned Bolivia, but there are numerous other countries that are coming our way. And Brazil, as you know, I had a very good conversation with the president. I met him at the United Nations before I went up to speak, and then I found that I didn't have a speech because I had no teleprompter. They turned off my teleprompter purposely. They made it impossible for me. But it didn't silence me. I spoke without, and it was a good speech. I mean, it was a good speech. But no, think of that. You go into the United Nations, I'm speaking in front of 158 leaders and the whole world. And I look at my teleprompter and it's dead. They killed my teleprompter. They wouldn't let the man that operated into the booth. Can you believe that?
You don't have any specific interest in economic terms for the state?
I do have. No, I want to see it succeed. I think it's going to be great, and we will benefit also. But it's not that big a benefit because it's not that big a country, but it's a very important country, and it's a country that can be very successful. There are some countries that will never be successful. This is a country that has great potential if it has the right leadership, and you have the right leadership with this man right here. Okay?
Mr.
President, would you support dollarization?
I would say that I'll leave that up to my my economic people, but I like the dollar. I'm very strong on the dollar. And anybody who wants to deal in dollars, they have an advantage over people that aren't. But for the most part, we're keeping it that way. I think if Biden would have, that group would have gotten elected, meaning Kamala, you wouldn't have the dollar as your currency anymore. You wouldn't have a world domination by the dollar if I didn't win this election. And now the domination, like BRICS. I told anybody who wants to be in BRICS, that's fine, but we're going to put tariffs on your nation. Everybody dropped out. They're all dropping out of BRICS. BRICS was an attack on the dollar. And I said, you want to play that game, I'm going to put tariffs on all of your product coming into the U.S. they said, like I said, we're dropping out of BRICS. And BRICS is like, they don't even talk about it anymore. Scott, you want to add to that, please?
We're very happy with the current currency arrangement.
Mr. President,
Your ABC fake news.
Mr. President,
Brian, please.
First of all,
I
congratulations.
don't take questions from ABC fake news. After what you did with Stephanopoulos to the Vice President of the United States, I don't take questions from ABC fake news. Brian, go ahead.
Yes, sir. First of all, congratulations on achieving peace. You are indeed the peacemaker. On a lighter...
Did you ever think I was going to be called a peacemaker?
Actually, I did. I saw some of the actions you were doing.
Go ahead.
But on a lighter note, Alyssa Farah, she is one of the hosts on ABC's show The View. She said a while back, I'll quote, "If Trump gets the Israeli hostages out, I promise I will wear a MAGA hat for one day on this show and say thank you for doing it." Your response?
Well, did she put the hat on?
Well, she hasn't got the hat yet.
Who is it? Which one?
Alyssa Farah.
Okay. Well, she used to work for me. So she used to work here. I'll tell you about Alyssa. She worked here. She gave me the most beautiful letter when, you know, the administration, the time came up, the election was rigged, I left. She gave me the most beautiful letter you've ever seen. I was a great president. What a great job. Some of the letters have been quoted. This is Alyssa, who I never thought was very outstanding. I figured she would not make it. And she didn't have a big role here either. And then we had January 6th, and she left after that or before that, but she gave me the most beautiful letters. And then even months after she left, and while we weren't here any longer, she sent another letter, glowing letter, beautiful letter. And then she got hired by The View, and they gave her a couple of bucks, and she changed her view very quickly. I never thought she'd make it, never thought she had what it took in any way. You know what that means. But she's on The View. But it just shows what a fraud The View is, because this woman gave me letters and statements. She said I was the greatest president in her lifetime. Now, she's not that old, so I didn't consider it a great compliment, but I've had better.
Can we send her a hat?
Well, recently I've had the greatest president of them all. I like that much about her.
Mr. President.
Does that include Washington and Lincoln? Yes, sir, it does. I said, I like that person. So I think she's a total, I think she's a joke.
Mr. President, on Gaza, how long will it take Hamas to disarm, and can you guarantee that is going to happen?
Well, they're going to disarm, and because they said they were going to disarm. And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them.
How will you do that?
I don't have to explain that to you. But if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. They know I'm not playing games, okay? Now, we did something monumental. We got the hostages back. That was the first thing we had to do. Above all else, get the hostages back. Now, they misrepresented because we were told they had 26, 24 of dead hostages, if we can use those terms. And it seems as though they don't have that because we're talking about a much lesser number. But that's a very tough subject. I want them back. That's what they said. I want them back. Also, they said they were going to disarm. And initially speaking, they needed, you know, they did take out a couple of gangs that were very bad, very, very bad gangs, and they did take them out. And they killed a number of gang members. And that didn't bother me much, to be honest with you. That's okay. We had a couple of very bad gangs. You know, it's no different than other countries. Like Venezuela sent their gangs into us, and we took care of those gangs. We have Washington, D.C. is one of the safest cities in the country. It was one of the worst cities in the country if you go back just a little while ago, right? Now it's safe. You can walk to work. Isn't it nice? But we have told them we want to disarm, and they will disarm. And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. And it'll happen quickly and perhaps violently. But they will disarm. Do you understand me?
Yes. You say
because
quickly.
you always, everyone says, oh, well, they won't disarm. They will disarm. And I spoke to Hamas, and I said, you're going to disarm, right? Yes, sir, we're going to disarm. That's what they told me. They will disarm, or we will disarm them. Got it? Okay.
What is the deadline you're going to put on that? You say quickly, sir. Sir, you said quickly, but what is the deadline you're going to put on that before you take action?
A reasonable period of time. Pretty quickly. A reasonable period of time.
Congratulations on the peace you achieved in the Middle East, first
Thank
of
you
all.
very much.
And my question is regarding Argentina. Does continue...
Are you from Argentina?
I'm from Argentina, yes.
I like the Argentina. I like them much better than ABC. Than ABC fake news.
Me too, sir.
Yes, go ahead.
Does continued U.S. support for Argentina depend on the results of the upcoming legislative elections and the ability of the government to pass long-lasting reforms through Congress?
Well, I think if they don't do that, we're not going to be around very long. Scott, can you handle that one, please?
We're confident that the president's party will and the coalition will do well in the election, and this aid is predicated on robust policies, and going back to the failed Peronist policies would cause a U.S. rethink.
Thank you very much.
It's a little bit, it's a great question. It's a little like New York. You know, you're reading in Argentina about New York. We have a problem. We have a communist who's 33 years old, doesn't know a damn thing. Practically, he's never worked a day in his life. And he sort of caught on, right? And I'm not going to send a lot of money to New York. I don't have to. You know, the money comes all through the White House. And if they're going to be sending us stupid policies, I mean, communist policies, which is proven for thousands of years doesn't work. You know, we don't have to prove it again. We're not going to ruin one of our great cities because we'll make that great. We will clean up the crime in about 30 days. Took 12 days to do Washington, D.C., so New York is bigger. And Chicago, we've already made a lot of progress despite fighting from the government, but Chicago's doing great. Memphis is doing really great. You know, we have great support there from the political leaders. They said, please come in and clean up crime. And we love it. We've in 1 week, Memphis is so good. It's so much better. We'll have it within a month. We'll have that into a safe city again. And all of these cities, we want to clean them up. We don't like that opposition. But if somebody's going to be a communist mayor of New York, it's a fluke if he gets in. There are a lot of failed people that he's running against. I mean, you have inferior candidates or something, because it's impossible to think that New York City can have a communist mayor. He's a communist. He's not a socialist, by the way. There's a big difference. He's a communist. He's down and dirty. He's a communist. He hates police. He wants to get rid of all police. I mean, how can a policeman? He hates Jewish people, and yet he's got Jewish people supporting. He hates Jewish people. So it comes through the White House. The funding for New York and for every place comes through the White House. And I'm very generous, and I was always very generous with New York, even when you had opposition there, but I was always very generous. But I wouldn't be generous to a communist, a guy that's going to take the money and throw it out the window, because you're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars. And we're not going to let somebody get into office and squander the taxpayer money from this country. We're not going to let it happen. So it's a little bit like that with, if you take a look at Argentina, if the president doesn't win, I know the person that he'd be running against, I believe, probably. We probably have the person. A person is extremely far left and a philosophy that got Argentina into this problem in the first place. So we would not be generous with Argentina if that happened. If he loses, we are not going to be generous with Argentina.
Mr. President, you talk about Argentina and important in the Latin American. What is your plan for Venezuela? But is the terrorism, the narco-terrorism in the President Maduro? What is your plan about it?
Venezuela's done a couple of things very badly. Number one, we get drugs and all of that. But we get something in a way worse, because they're a big purveyor of drugs, but we have worse. What they do very well is they send their criminals into the United States, and they send Tren de Aragua, that you know very well. You're from Venezuela, I assume. And they send them in by the thousands, literally. And these are the worst of all. And they empty their prisons into the United States. They empty their mental institutions into the United States. And because we had a president who's low IQ, he didn't realize what was going on. And the people that are high IQ that surround him, but they happen to be lunatics, radical left, they're highly intelligent, radical left lunatics, okay? So in a way, that's worse than having a guy like Biden. But they ran the show. You heard about the Autopen, the person that really operated the Autopen, but it was really the people that told the person that operated the Autopen what to do. Those are the people that really were president, okay? So we're not going to stand for it in this country. And And by the way, that auto pen thing is under serious investigation. Just this, I don't think you care because you're from Argentina. You couldn't care less about that. But I just want to say, because I do the weave, you know, the weave, cover a lot of different subjects. But the people that are involved in that auto pen scam, because he barely signed anything. I mean, this guy, I don't know how you can be president. He barely signed it. But the only thing we can find for sure is that he signed Hunter's pardon, his pardon. Hunter's pardon, I like that. That's a good combination. So we're going to work very much with the president. We think he's going to win. He should win. And if he does win, we're going to be very helpful. And if he doesn't win, we're not going to waste our time because you have somebody whose philosophy has no chance of making Argentina great again.
What's your advice for
Steve, go ahead, Steve.
What's your advice for
Just to check something, you said Hamas assured you that they would disarm. Was that a direct conversation or through Mr. Witkoff? Or?
Through my people.
Okay.
At the highest level.
What's your advice?
And it was meant for him.
What's your advice for President Milei and Argentina as a political leader?
My advice is to hold strong to his principles because he's right, and he's proving that he was right. He's got one problem. He's got people that are giving him tremendously bad press, even though they know it's wrong. He's got to hold true to his principles because he's going to win. He's going to win. He's doing the right thing. Everybody knows he's doing the right thing, but you have a radical left sick culture that's a very dangerous group of people, and they're trying to make him look bad. I believe he's going to win out.
We're doing the right way with China in this house.
China? Well, you have to be careful with China. Look, everybody deals with China. They have to deal with us too. We have to be careful with China. Look, I have a great relationship with President Xi, but sometimes it gets testy because China likes to take advantage of people, and they can't take advantage of us. But we have a fair relationship with China, and I think it'll be fine. And if it's not, that's okay too. You have to do and go where the punches are thrown. You got to put up the blocks. We have a lot of punches being thrown, and we've been very successful. Look. We have the most success. I think we're the most successful we've ever been as a country. We have now close, I've been saying 17, we have, I think, close to or maybe even exceeding $18 trillion going to be invested in the United States. That's more money than ever invested in any country before. Even countries with much bigger populations like India or like China. Nobody's ever had $18 trillion invested in the country. We have, and that's because of November 5th election, because I won. Oh, if she won, you'd be negative. You'd have people getting out of the country. This country would have been in a major depression. If she won, we would have been 1929. They'd like to see that anyway. That's why they keep the government closed. They have a shutdown based on nonsense. They want to give away 1.5, think of it, they want to give away $1.5 trillion to people that come into the country illegally. And as you know, the borders now are closed. But when they hear that they get the greatest health care package in the world and they have no money, but they're living okay in another country, they head up and they start forming caravans and they try and come into our country. But the big problem is they want to give health care to people that should not get health care. They want to give health care to illegal immigrants by the millions. Look at Gavin Newsom, what he's done. He's ruined California. He gives health care to anybody. And I guess they do it for votes. I actually think it's bad politics, but I guess they do it for votes. So I'm with this man because his philosophy is correct. And he may win and he may not win, but I think he's going to win. And if he wins, we're staying with him. And if he doesn't win, we're gone.
How can Argentina help to the peace process, to the Middle East peace process?
They can help by doing well. If Argentina does well, that's helpful because they know we help Argentina. So if Argentina is successful, that's great because they view us as somebody that helped Argentina and they did well, and the United States maybe will help them and they're going to do well. So the success of Argentina would be a great feather in the cap of the USA because we're helping them. Right? You understand?
Yeah.
Yeah, please, behind you. Behind you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Last week you said that NATO should consider expelling Spain.
What?
You said that NATO should consider expelling Spain. Would you support that?
What is expelling Spain?
NATO consider expelling Spain.
Oh. I'm very unhappy with Spain. They're the only country that didn't raise up their number to 5%. Every other country in NATO raised up to 5%. And Spain is doing very well off our backs. So I'm not happy with Spain. Spain gets protection, and they know, look, they're sort of in the semi-middle of it, so they're going to get protected automatically. Even if you don't want to protect them, you're protecting them because of the way they're located. And I think what Spain did is a very bad thing for NATO. I think it's very unfair to NATO. It wouldn't matter if you said you're not going to protect them because they're pretty much protected. What are you going to do? Go through the other countries and let's go attack Spain, right? So I think what they did is not nice. I think it's very disrespectful to NATO. In fact, I was thinking about giving them trade punishment through tariffs because of what they did. And I may do that. I think unbelievably disrespectful. Spain, the only one out of all the countries in NATO, the only one that said that is Spain. And I think that's, I think they should be punished for that. Yes.
On the government shutdown, you have the money to pay the troops on October 15th. Okay, how is
I actually have a man who is a very wealthy person. You'll know that when I tell you this. Who called a donor, a great gentleman, and he said, if there's any money necessary, shortfall, for the paying of the troops, then I will pay it, meaning he will pay it. How about that? I said, look, we're not going to need it. We're going to take care of our troops. But this was a position that's being forced upon us by Democrats. And all they have to do is just sign a piece of paper saying we're going to keep it going the way it is. There's nothing. It's not like it shouldn't even be an argument. They've signed it many times before. I don't want to bore you with the fact that Schumer said 100 times you should never close up government. But Schumer's a weakened politician. I mean, he's going to finish his career as a failed politician. He's a failed politician. He's allowed the radical left to take over the Democrat Party. So if they write books about that, if they write books about him, they're going to have to say that his career ended by allowing the radical left to take over the party. I mean, I won an election in a landslide because people are not into the radical left, and the Democrat Party is. People didn't want to see men playing in women's sports. They didn't want to see transgender for everybody. They didn't want to see all of the different things that they do that's so crazy. Open borders. I mean, the worst thing that he did to us, it's not inflation, because we fixed inflation. Prices are way down. I don't know if you saw that gasoline went to 58 just now. Did you see what's going on with gasoline?
We track that.
No, $58 a barrel.
Yeah, we track that.
Nobody can believe it. I'm very proud of that. You know why? Because we're pumping like we've never pumped before. Because if you get the gas price down, everything else comes down. It's very simple. And he went away from my policies, and you had the greatest inflation. The last administration had the greatest inflation in the history of our country. And now, as you know, groceries are down. It's all down.
But on the shutdown, are you settling in for is this going to be a long term? Are we looking months?
It's up to them. All they have to do is just vote to extend. We don't need it. We're not saying we want money. All we need is a right to extend. They want a right to extend, but they want $1.5 trillion so they can give it away to illegal immigrants, the people that are invading your cities. And many of these people, for whatever reason, I mean, I understood this. I called it a long time ago. These countries are run by people I know, friends of mine. Like, I know this gentleman. I hope you haven't said, he probably did too. Why not? They send up their worst people. They send up people that are criminals. They send up people from jails. And at best, the best ones they send up are people that don't work very hard and that are on a social form of welfare. And they're sending those people into the United States. I don't blame them. I'm angry at them, but I don't blame them. But I'm really angry at Biden and Kamala and that group of lunatics for allowing it to happen, because it's the hardest thing. Now, you know, we're sending them out. It's incredible the job that Christie and Tom Homan and the whole group is doing. But we shouldn't have to be doing that. We're doing a lot of work on getting people out of here. Tren de Aragua has caused tremendous damage, and our soldiers are great. You know, our soldiers are now based on merit. They're not based on woke, because we won the case in the Supreme Court, which was the bravest case. I have such respect for the Supreme Court because of what they did with merit, because our country was built on merit. Countries are destroyed on woke. You know, I made a statement, and I hated to make it because it sounded bad, but everything turns to you know what when it goes woke. You remember the term. I don't like to use it because you might have some children listening, but it turns bad. And no, we have the hottest country right now anywhere in the world. That's why he's here. That's why every other country wants to meet here too. But we only have so many hours in the day and days in the week. But we got the hottest country. Think of it. We were a dead country a year and a half ago. And now we have the hottest country anywhere in the world. It's pretty good. Did a good job. Okay.
And you're just watching now President Trump hosting the Argentine President Javier Milei at the White House, marking their second meeting within a month. And joining us now to discuss is Mike Leon, NTD News contributor and host of the Can We Please Talk podcast. And we have Tony Kinnett, national correspondent at the Daily Signal and host of the Tony Kinnett Cast radio show and podcast. So good to see you guys, as always. Tony, I'll start with you because I understand you might have to go soon. So what do you think of President Trump saying that he's going to endorse Milei and that if he wins, the U.S. will stay? If his opponent wins, then the U.S. is not going to be so generous?
The old classic art of foreign policy. Good afternoon to you both. I mean, this is how I actually, as an American, am okay with the American ethos being used. Politics is not a neutral game. It's not a we're going to stay out of it kind of game. Look, the United States aid is tied to our policies. It benefits Americans more for someone who is along same philosophical principles as Americans to be endorsed, or at least to say we don't want the other guy in an election. That's not a new thing. We've been doing that since we chose not to enter the French Revolutionary decision and essentially not upset the British back in the very first term. So as far as we're looking at here with the Milei decision, kind of a mixed bag with the whole loan aspect of it. But as far as tying aid to the political decisions that Argentina is making, I'm very much for that because, if it's like a Brazilian situation where they elect a socialist, then I don't believe the United States should then be aiding the country in the same way if they had someone who was more aligned to American political philosophy.
So, Mike, what are your thoughts on this? President Trump saying that the U.S. will continue to be generous to Argentina as long as Milei's in power.
Yeah, good to see you both, as always, on this Tuesday afternoon. No shock. I mean, Javier Milei was at the inauguration for Donald Trump. I mean, he's been friends with him. He joined him on the campaign trail. I mean, Tony's right about the overarching premise of, the political relationship. Whether we tie it to the aid of that country or not, I mean, again, it all depends on the economic benefits. They're not one of our top trade partners in Latin America. They're not even in the top five in terms of our trade partners. We're one of their top trade partners when you look at the five countries in the top five that they import and export to. So, I mean, I get that sentiment in terms of Trump saying, hey, if he's still around, for sure, yes, I will help Argentina. If he's not, I mean, I get that sentiment overall. The 25 midterm elections coming up in October 26, I should say, for Argentina will be critical to see what happens in that country. But in terms of this $20 billion currency swap, loan, whatever we want to call it, I mean, it's a mixed bag from the political messaging standpoint. You heard a reporter there ask him, how is this America first when we're bailing out Argentina? Anybody has seen the clips of Arkansas soybean farmers talking about how this is going to impact them? I don't know how I would sell it that this is America first, given for people that don't understand basic economics of what this currency swap looks like. I don't know how I would sell that. So I don't know how the president and his team are going to sell that. But I do understand when you think about the relationship that he has with Milei, make Argentina great again, and all the things that Milei has tried to, kind of impart on Argentina that has kind of mirrored or piggyback a little bit of what Trump said he was going to do on the campaign trail and what he's done so far these last 9 months.
So, Tony, can you comment on that as well, the $20 billion currency swap amid a government shutdown?
So first of all, the idea that government shutdown is kind of a central impact on here. Some of these funds are already allotted into certain, let's say, buckets or envelopes, as it were, to disperse in the current fiscal process. But that said, as for the 20 billion, I'm a little dubious on this as well. In the same way, probably mostly the same way that Mike is. Just throwing money at a country and hoping that it sticks and that it's fine and that it's going to help. I have a bit of PTSD on that particular matter because throwing money at programs doesn't magically fix them. That said, it is also true concurrently that, yeah, the Milei government is overcoming, 80 to 120 years of really terrible back and forth circuit breaker switch flipping policies. And I get it. I get the stimulus kind of goals, the idea of growing Argentina's economy as a regional trade partner. Kind of in an Israel of the South America, to kind of drive a longer term U.S. interest there. I get the appeal of it. I don't know how workable it is. And here's where I'll actually admit that my practical knowledge would end, and I'd say, well, I don't know. I had different predictions about what Trump's tariff proposals would do for the U.S. inflation rates. And those, I ended up seeing something totally different, a second or third prediction that I had kind of waiting in the wings. So here I see Scott Bessent very hesitant. You can actually tell how the Trump administration's economic policy is being carried out by how Scott starts talking. He's very hesitant here. I don't know exactly how this currency swap is going to be effectuated. I don't know if it's going to be enough to make a major tick in the Argentine stock markets and the economy itself. So I'm kind of waiting. I wouldn't say cautiously optimistic, more just cautious. I'm kind of on my tiptoes here.
So, Mike, can you comment on Trump and Milei's relationship here? How much of their ideologies are aligned?
Yeah, I mean that's the big question. I mean, Milei's self-described, I believe, libertarian. So would we put Trump in that libertarian category? I mean, maybe, depends upon what it is that you're talking about. From that perspective, here's one thing I will say about something that Milei has done since 2023. I had to read these numbers earlier, Don, Tony, because these shocked me. When he took office in 2023, inflation was roughly 211% annually. That's as of December of 2023. This is according to BBC News. Since then, 2 years later into his administration, they've had their first fiscal surplus in the last 14 years. And inflation is down to 36%. Again, this is according to BBC News. So, I mean, the bailout part of this, right, in terms of the relationship, Don, to your question, we know why he's doing it. I just said, make Argentina great again. He's joked about that on the campaign trail. That's the slogan that he's brought upon. The chainsaw was a gift from Elon. They have a very close relationship. So he just said it in the presser. He's like, if he's not here, I'm not going to give them money. If he's here, I'm going to give them money. So I don't need to expand on the relationship beyond that. But what I will say is that, back to Tony's point about the political angle of this, right? The government shutdown is not tied to this. Tony's right. There's already funds pre-allocated for this. But the fact that on the surface, we're struggling right now with tariff policy that is having real impact in the flyover states. I hate that term. In those Rust Belt states that farmers are impacted. They're going on different platforms and saying, we can't be giving $20 billion to one of our big competitors in the soybean market. And it just looks bad on the surface. And so I come at it from a little bit of that angle. The relationship is self-explanatory. I mean, the two of them, again, one went to the other one's inauguration, and the other one just said in front of reporters and the entire cabinet that he's only going to give him money if Milei's there, and he's not going to give him money if Milei's there. And it doesn't matter if you speak English or Spanish. You could easily see that they'd have a really good relationship. But the political angle in all of this is the one that Trump has really got to pick up the pieces. And Tony's right. Scott Bessent's kind of, dancing around, maybe a little bit hesitant in terms of describing this relationship. I think that speaks volumes for sure.
Okay, Tony, I do believe you have to go soon. I mean, if you want to give a quick final thought, and then we'll let you go.
Absolutely. So the kind of core issue that I have with this is that I really don't care for the presidential purse of USAID. I said that before. I said that here on this segment before. I don't like the idea of the president of the United States kind of deciding, hey, we have this money that's set aside for me to use as an essential combative measure on the world stage. You have soft diplomacy, and then you have more heavy-handed diplomacy through the strong arm of U.S. force and diplomatic leverage. And the reason that USAID was invented was to give the president a personal bribery fund, to bribe countries to work with the United States instead of the Soviet Union. That's why it was created. USAID is shut down. I don't like that. I don't like that. Well, yeah, it's, it may be gone, but, its ghost will remain with us forever. And little private projects that do, at face value, hurt American farmers. I don't like playing around with American farmers anyway. Like, either we do subsidies or we don't. We don't provide foreign subsidies at the same time as central structured subsidies. It makes the incentive market bonkers. I think that there might be ways to, and I'll have to do research on this, there might be ways to cut regulatory action in order to incentivize regional trade and currency shoring in developing Argentine markets in order to shore up their currency long term that have previously not been available. For example, prior administrations had central restrictions on certain mountainous mining and refining. That might be something to look into. I'm just a guy from one of those corn and soybean fields in Indiana. They just picked ours this afternoon. So as far as I'm concerned, I just don't like this whole thing in general. I like Javier Milei. I get why he's doing it, like Mike said. I really don't like reviving the ghost of USAID. I just think that it needs to be put to bed and done with. The Cold War is over. I get that China is an adversary to combat them, but the throwing around the money purse just it rubs me the wrong way as a free market conservative. I don't care for it.
Well, okay, Tony, we'll let you go now, and we'll speak again the next week. Thank you.
Thanks both.
Okay, so Mike, I also wanted to get your comments real quick on the Gaza peace plan as well today. So, I find it interesting that many left-leaning media outlets are reporting on this deal positively, and some would even call it rare when it comes to Trump. What do you think about all this?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a couple things, Don. First, President Biden did get 100 or so Israeli hostages out of, Hamas control, right? But was he able to negotiate something like this where it was a 20-point plan that was articulated, drafted, had other countries support and buy-in, as you saw those countries in Egypt? Did it have a future plan and state for Gaza, for people to return back to Gaza? The Palestinian prisoner exchange that happened with over 2,000 or so Palestinian prisoners. Remember, there was a lot of Palestinians that were taken and put in Israeli prisons post October 7th of 2023. So did the Biden administration do any of that? No. I mean, I hate that people can't have these two thoughts in their head at the same time, Don. Like, for me, I will always hammer President Trump on things that he is doing domestically that are potentially harming American citizens that I disagree with, whether it be things that are happening right now at DHS and what ICE is doing and becoming the largest law enforcement agency. There are a bunch of things to talk about from a domestic standpoint, deploying National Guard troops and city safety, and how do we do all that. But when it comes to this on the foreign policy stage, I think for these outlets, the president said, I can solve these wars. They wouldn't have started if I was here, which obviously is subjective. We have no idea. That's hypothetical. We don't even know if that would have happened. But here we are now, a short, 10, 12 months later since the campaign trail, and we're seeing a ceasefire, although there's been little, let's be honest, inklings of some Israeli IDF just reporting that they shot some Palestinians this morning, according to a bunch of different outlets. So I don't know if that breaks the terms of the ceasefire. But to actually see these countries show up in Egypt yesterday, sign this peace agreement in phase one, and now we'll see what happens in phase two. I mean, the fact that we've gotten to this point, you can only point to one thing to give credit to. And all these outlets all said Steve Witkoff is not the guy to be able to negotiate something like this, Don, because he doesn't have this experience. He's worked in real estate. And here is Steve Witkoff bringing these parties to the table and getting this first part of phase one done with these Israeli hostages coming home and the Palestinian prisoners going back to Gaza. I mean, you have to give credit where credit's due sometimes, Don.
And just real quick, one final question, I think. You mentioned that Hamas went onto the streets to, execute Palestinians they claim worked with Israel. Do you think that's a red flag there in terms of lasting peace in the region? And plus the fact that Hamas has not agreed to disarm.
Yeah, I think both of those things are the thing that I've been saying the most across NTD, over the last couple of days since it's been signed, right? Like phase one, and again, I hate even saying this because of the hostages and all the turmoil they went through. Phase one was probably the easiest part of this, getting a negotiation and the countries to agree on prisoner swap, hostages swap, location, who's mediating that. That's the easiest part. The second part of this is there a two-state solution? Is, Gazans returning back home? What does the future of the government, in Gaza look like, right? Is it something from the West Bank? Is it something that's new to that area? And then how does Hamas ultimately disarm when the West considers Hamas a terrorist organization? Those are things we can't answer, Don, because nobody knows that. And if we did know that, this conflict would have been solved. October 7th would have never happened. All of those things. So Hamas has been in power, or at least been around since 2005, 2006. They killed leaders of the opposition party, even though they were duly elected. I mean, this has been happening for over 20 plus years. So the fact that we got phase one done, again, I don't want it to sound callous, because like I said, I'm incredibly sensitive of everything that the hostages have gone through and the prisoners have gone through. That was the easy part. The harder part now comes in what becomes the future state of this region without Hamas, because I can't imagine Hamas saying, yeah, you know what, we are going to disarm. Even though President Trump has said this a bunch, and I know he said the caveat, he said it in the cabinet meeting, he just said that if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. How does that look? What is that we will disarm them? Because if it's more bombing, if it's more indiscriminate killing, there's 70,000 people that have died in Gaza since this war has happened, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. To continue to indiscriminately bomb Gaza because of the Hamas militants that are there, that's not the solve for this. He wants truly everlasting peace. I don't know how we get that. I don't know how we accomplish phase two with Hamas in charge, Don.
Okay, well, Mike, it's always good to talk to you. And I think that's our time today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Don.
U.S. Homeland Security says cartels are placing bounties on ICE and federal agents. Up to 50 grand is being offered, but Kristi Noem says the U.S. will not back down to the threats. Stay with us for that after the break.
Whispered across generations, a hidden secret unveils the essence of longevity and vitality. A timeless legend regarding energy and wonder. Rooted in ancient health wisdom, we proudly introduce Pure Tang Black Ginseng, a 100% natural organic energy drink made from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng. It takes 2,260 days and nights from seed to growth, undergoing a meticulous 9-step process of steaming and drying. Black ginseng reaches its full potency, enriched with ginsenoside RG3 and enhanced absorption efficiency. No sugar, no caffeine, no artificial ingredients. Experience the pure natural power of Pure Tang Black Ginseng. Nourish your body, strengthen your immunity, and boost your energy. To order Pure Tang Black Ginseng, please visit puretang.com.
What if kids in America didn't have to go to bed hungry tonight? What if our moms, dads, and grandparents could put healthy food on the table every day to help us grow strong? What if all of our friends and neighbors had fresh food too, and there was no hunger at all in America? And what if there was a way today for you to help? Call now or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, just 63 cents a day. So many of us don't have enough food to eat, but your monthly gift means families across the country and in your community can fill plates with food. Kids can get healthy meals year-round, even when school is out, and our neighbors can have fresh food. Food that moms, dads, entire families need to thrive. But right now, more people are facing hunger. Feeding America works from coast to coast with partner food banks, food pantries, and meal programs. It takes all of us to make that happen. Will you help too? Please call the number on your screen or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give just $19 a month. and we'll send you this free canvas grocery bag. It's our way of saying thank you for helping to end hunger for our neighbors. Because no kid, no mom or dad, nobody should go hungry in America. Nobody. So what if today was the day you could help nourish futures for our friends, our families, for all of us? Ending hunger is possible. What if we end it together? Call or give online today at helpfeedingamerica.org, and your gift can be doubled. Thank you.
Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. President Donald Trump meets with Argentina's President Javier Milei at the White House. Trump answers questions from reporters on Hamas and Argentina's upcoming election. The Trump administration will use tariff revenue to keep the Women, Infant, and Children's Supplemental Nutrition Program afloat during the shutdown. Democrats maintain they will continue to vote to keep the shutdown unless their demands are met. Hamas tightens its grip in Gaza after carrying out public executions. We talked to a former U.S. ambassador about the diplomatic strategies and obstacles that lay ahead. Britain expects to see the full plans before approval of a huge proposed Chinese embassy in London after China previously supplied blueprints with areas blacked out. Critics in both the UK and the US have repeatedly warned the site could be used as a Chinese spy base. Ukraine is reportedly revoking the citizenship of the mayor of Odessa, the allegations he is facing. U.S. Homeland Security says cartels are placing bounties on ICE and federal agents. Up to 50 grand is being offered, but Kristi Noem says the U.S. will not back down to the threats.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
The Senate will vote yet again on proposals to reopen the government. Republicans warned that the Democrats' refusal to compromise could make this the longest shutdown in history, potentially. Our Washington correspondent, Luis Eduardo Martinez, has the latest from Capitol Hill.
It seems like Groundhog Day on Capitol Hill. The Senate will vote for an 8th time on proposals to reopen government. The Republican House-passed bill simply seeks to extend current levels of government funding, while the Democratic proposal would add $1.5 trillion of government spending to extend COVID-era healthcare tax credits.
We did not load up the temporary funding bill with any Republican priorities or partisan priorities at all. I don't have anything that I can take off of that document to make it more palatable.
Around 4,000 federal employees will be terminated by reductions in force. Democratic senators from Maryland and Virginia, where thousands of federal employees live, maintain that their healthcare policy demands must be met for the government to reopen.
And we know that when we support our federal employees, we are supporting every American.
We can do both. Let's get the government reopened. Let's stop this healthcare crisis cliff and make sure these federal workers get back pay.
The White House will use research and development funds from the Department of War to pay active duty military personnel. And it will use also tariff revenue to keep the Women, Infant, and Children Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program afloat during the shutdown.
We are grateful that the White House has made available this week indicates that it may be about $300 million. And if that's correct, we think that's about 2 weeks of benefits on average if it's equally distributed across states.
Air traffic controllers and thousands of essential federal employees will miss their first paycheck this week.
Have to pay my mortgage payment. I need to provide for my family. I think any time that you have to go without a paycheck, there's a certain level of stress that comes with that.
And this introduces a new risk to aviation. Air traffic controllers are supposed to mitigate risk. Air traffic controllers ensure that risk is out of the system so that those who fly and those who we serve, that they are safe. And this brings a risk where their focus is now on, when I get off my shift today, do I have to go and drive Uber tonight?
The longer the shutdown continues, the fewer options the White House will have to keep essential personnel paid and important welfare programs like WIC afloat during the government shutdown. Republicans are bracing for what could become the longest ever government shutdown in U.S. history. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
While some critical economic data is delayed due to the ongoing government shutdown, today Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell provided some insights on the economic outlook at the NABE meeting.
Based on the data we do have, it's fair to say that the outlook for employment and inflation does not appear to have changed much since our September meeting 4 weeks ago. There is no risk-free path for policy as we navigate the tension between our employment and inflation goals.
Powell said the Fed is still able to review public and private data. He started by describing the labor market as softer and less dynamic. Powell said unemployment has remained low, but payrolls have gained and have slowed sharply. He said that household and firm perceptions of job availability and hiring difficulties continue on downward trajectories. As for inflation, Powell said the 12-month core PCE inflation in August was up slightly from earlier this year at 2.9%. Powell noted price increases on goods primarily reflect tariffs rather than broader inflationary pressures. The high seas is now a key front in the trade war between the world's two largest economies. The U.S. and China began charging additional port fees on ocean shipping firms today. Here are the details.
The US and China are charging additional tit-for-tat port fees on ocean shipping firms in the latest escalation of their trade war. These charges will affect vessels transporting everything from toys to crude oil. China has already begun collecting the fees from ships that are US-owned, operated, built, or flagged. However, Chinese-built vessels are exempt. According to state media, exemptions also apply to empty ships entering Chinese shipyards for repairs. Meanwhile, the US will begin collecting its fees on Tuesday. Earlier this year, the Trump administration set out a plan to target China-linked ships in a bid to weaken Beijing's dominance of global shipping and boost American shipbuilding. A prior investigation under former President Joe Biden found that China uses unfair practices to control the maritime, logistics, and shipbuilding sectors, clearing the way for the new penalties. One analyst said Chinese state-owned shipping giant COSCO could be hit hardest, potentially absorbing nearly half of the estimated $3.2 billion in fees by 2026. Despite the turmoil, shares in COSCO rose around 3% in early trading on Tuesday. The company announced a plan to buy back shares worth around $210 million to protect its value and reassure investors.
Hamas terrorists tightened their grip in Gaza today after carrying out public executions. And just a heads up, the following footage may be disturbing to some viewers. The terrorists executed men they accused of collaborating with Israeli forces. Gaza residents said the terrorists were increasingly visible today, deploying along routes needed for aid deliveries. Palestinian security sources say dozens of people have been killed in clashes between Hamas and rivals in recent days. And Israel's military says it has identified the bodies of 4 deceased hostages. That includes Nepali national Bipin Joshi and Israeli citizen Guy Aluz, who was taken from the Nova Music Festival. 2 others remain unnamed at their family's request. The army says Hamas is still holding the bodies of 24 hostages. Former President Biden has praised President Trump for his role in brokering a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. In a statement on X yesterday, Biden commended Trump and his team for their work to get a ceasefire deal over the finish line. Biden also highlighted his administration's efforts to bring hostages home and provide aid to Palestinian civilians. He said the Israeli hostages went through unimaginable hell and said civilians in Gaza will finally get a chance to rebuild their lives. Biden said with U.S. backing, the Middle East is on a path to peace. He expressed hope for a future for Israelis and Palestinians alike, with equal measures of peace, dignity, and safety. House Speaker Mike Johnson celebrating the Gaza peace deal. He said he is going to support President Trump's nomination for the Nobel Peace Prize.
I'm proud to tell you that together with my friend Speaker Ohana of the Israeli Knesset, the equivalent of our Congress, we're going to embark upon a project together to rally speakers and presidents of parliaments around the world so that we will jointly nominate President Donald J. Trump for next year's Nobel Peace Prize.
Johnson calls the signing of the Gaza peace deal a historic moment that deserves enormous credit and recognition on the world stage. He said no one has ever deserved that prize more than Trump. The House Speaker added that no president has undertaken the work of saving lives and pursuing peace with such determination and such success. The Prime Minister of Pakistan yesterday said he will nominate Trump again for the Nobel Peace Prize next year. Nominations for 2026 are accepted until January 31st. The Nobel Committee is expected to announce the winner roughly a year from now. Joining us to discuss is Carla Sands. She is the chair of the America First Policy Institute's Foreign Policy Initiative and former U.S. ambassador to the Kingdom of Denmark. So first of all, good afternoon to you, Ambassador. Can you just speak to the significance here of President Trump being able to get the release of all hostages, all living hostages from Hamas? Can we start there?
Absolutely. President Trump has led boldly, bargained hard, and delivered results. The fact that no one else in the world could have freed these hostages taken over 700 days ago. And yesterday, the whole world, with few exceptions, rejoiced in the release of these hostages that have been abused, tortured, in some cases chained in one place for almost their entire captivity, taken by the terrorists Hamas. And what he is doing with his 20-point plan, and really the consensus of almost every powerful nation in the world aligned with him, is revolutionary to bring peace to the Gaza region.
Can you go into a little bit more detail here, Ambassador, about the approach that President Trump is employing here, his diplomatic strategies? How is it working? And what has led that strategy to bring Israel and Hamas towards peace?
Well, President Trump, as you will recall, wrote the book, The Art of the Deal. And he is a deal maker. He has brought deal makers in, like Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. And what they do is they look for results. They don't look for process. American, and I will say most of the world's diplomats, they're about the process and not about the outcomes. President Trump is willing to force change. And by forcing the change, by moving quickly and forcing the change, he requires everyone around him to renegotiate, to take new positions. And so he has been able to break through, working with partners like the Qataris and the Turks to bring Hamas not just to the table, but to agreeing to the 20-point plan. And they have the first several points of the 20-point plan already achieved. And now it's up to the next step is Hamas lay down their arms and ask for amnesty or get safe passage out of Gaza. They will not tolerate images like you just showed with Hamas literally killing people in the streets because either they're from the wrong clan or they're suspected of having worked with the Israelis.
And on the topic of diplomacy, can you also talk about the importance of the personal diplomacy here and the relationship between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu?
Well, President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu have a wonderful working relationship, but I do think that Netanyahu made some maybe miscalculations in his prosecution of this war. And so you can see that the results are that the Palestinians will have their state, and it will be enforced and controlled, governed, if you will, by President Trump and people like Tony Blair. And it will be members of the Arab states, members from European states, but there will be order in Gaza and there will be development. And a lot of those Arab states, some of them that are part of the Abraham Accords, are going to help to finance and redevelop Gaza so that it's wonderful for the citizens. And that means infrastructure, bakeries, hospitals, all the things that people need to have their daily wonderful life.
And Ambassador, I think we can't forget Trump's team, right? Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Can you just comment on the Trump administration as well in achieving this initial peace agreement?
Don, I'm happy to. I'm thrilled to, actually. President Trump literally said he thinks that Secretary of State Marco Rubio will go down in history as the greatest Secretary of State in the history of our country. Well, that's extraordinary and so exciting. And I think it may be true because he's wearing so many hats. He's also the head of the NSC, acting as NSA, And he's running several other organizations besides the State Department, which in itself are tens of thousands of people around the world. It's already a huge beast to sort of get your arms around and have it do, create coalitions to have them fulfill the President Trump's I will say his doctrine, his initiatives. And then we can see Jared Kushner has been involved with the region since the first Trump administration, done a wonderful job helping to create the Abraham Accords. The countries that first joined the Abraham Accords, like UAE, Sudan, Morocco, there are others. Now we see new countries that are planning to join. I believe Indonesia has spoken about joining. So this is what's happening is with President Trump bringing peace to the Middle East, at least the beginning of peace, the idea of peace, which is also revolutionary in itself. This is going to allow the Abraham Accords, or as President Trump has been saying, the Avraham Accords, to grow and expand, and that will bring prosperity and stability to the region. So it's a wonderful thing what's happening. And President Trump's personal relationship with people like Netanyahu, Erdogan in Turkey, the leadership in the UAE, in Saudi Arabia, and all these other countries is so key to this. You could see when they did the photo op yesterday after the signing, there were very warm relationships between all these people and President Trump, including most of the European leaders were there in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, gathering together in support of this plan. So it's almost like the birth of a baby. The whole world is coming around, with few exceptions, to say we're going to support this effort. So I am cautiously optimistic that this is a great step forward for the Middle East. The people of the Middle East deserve to have prosperity and peace like we in the West enjoy.
And just to see the joy and the celebrations among Israelis, it's really encouraging here. And Ambassador, I just want to follow up on a point you mentioned earlier about the footage that we showed of violence that Hamas is engaging in. Can we get your comments on what do you think the obstacles still remain in achieving permanent peace? Because this is the initial phase, right? Because we've seen reports that Hamas is engaging in executions of those that it claims has cooperated with Israel. So maybe you can talk to us about that, the obstacles here.
Well, the obstacles are great because we know that it's not just Hamas that went on October 7th and attacked the people of Israel and killed and raped, burned people alive. It was also Gazans and people involved with the UN, with UNRWA. And so I think that the biggest issue is going to be the de-radicalization. Part of it is the education that the children get. Golda Meir once said, we'll have peace with Gaza in the Middle East when the people of Palestine love their children more than they do. And I think that the idea that they're going to live side by side is going to mean that they're going to have to change their mindset and their education. The people that hate Israel are probably not going to be able to stay because they will not tolerate, this coalition will not tolerate attacks on Israelis and hateful acts, the suicide bombers. That has to end. Using the aid to build tunnels to attack Israel has to end. Now, there are certain concepts in Islam for these jihadi types that say, you can fake peace for 10 or 15 years, and then you go back at it and you go back to jihad, which is what they've been doing against Israel. They want to end, every Jewish life in that region. These people, not the general Arab community, but I'm talking about the Gazans in many cases. And so they're going to have to really watch this, and it's going to be necessary to keep watchful hands on this situation for the decades to come. I mean, past my lifetime, they'll have to really help and nurture this new, it's going to be a new society with infrastructure and a good life for these people, but they're going to have to behave themselves. So the carrots and sticks that President Trump uses, where he requires performance for every reward, so that there are hurdles that the Palestinian people will have to jump through, that's going to be important to keep that in place.
So there's a carrot and stick approach, this peace through strength approach. How does Trump's approach, how is it different from previous administrations in terms of international relations and peace?
Sure. Most previous administrations went to concessions right away. And instead of being strong in the negotiation, which is certainly necessary in the Middle East, that's a very tough place to negotiate. Instead of leading from strength, they started with concessions. And so the opponents, whoever that country was or group, saw weakness and took every advantage. Well, President Trump, just like in trade, says, no, we're not here to be abused. We're here to be the superpower of the world, benign, good, but you don't mess with us. And because he has that strong America First leadership, leading with peace through strength, then the other countries and other organizations, groups like the Palestinians, they are responding with, I'm sure, pressure from Qatar, from Turkey, so there's been outside pressure on them as well. Otherwise, I don't believe they would have come to the table at all.
Okay, Ambassador, let me just ask you one more question. And this is relating to President Trump's legacy. If we're looking back from the future at this moment, how do you think President Trump's legacy in terms of the global stage will be remembered?
Well, thank you for that question. It's such a leading question. I think that he goes down in history as the greatest president in the history of our country. He's being compared in the Middle East to Cyrus the Great. And so we can, how long ago was that? Hundreds of years ago. So, and one of the greatest leaders in the world. So you can see he's coming from a position of strength. He is upending the diplomatic and global norms. And he's saying that we're going to hold everyone accountable for their actions, accountable for how they treat others and treat us, and that there'll be hurdles, and that for every good thing that comes to these folks, they're going to have to perform. It's not going to be automatic. And so that's really encouraging. And it's also going to encourage more good behavior from other countries. They're going to want to benefit from trade, from aid, from powerful and rich countries like this coalition that President Trump's put together. Those countries that gathered there in Sharm el-Sheikh yesterday, I think that it's most of the global GDP was in the room. So, he really does have a coalition of the great. And who doesn't want to be part of that? Everyone.
Well, okay, Ambassador, really enjoyed our conversation today. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
The Department of Homeland Security says it has arrested over 1,500 illegal immigrants in Illinois. DHS says pedophiles, gang members, and armed robbers were among those arrested. We have more when we come back.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
I don't remember how it started. Our back and forth. Victory. Fumble. Repeat. It always came back.
Okay, here we go, throw it!
Yeah. You probably don't remember what you told me.
That was perfect.
But I heard every word.
Nice.
There is a road laid out for me.
Boxes everywhere. And this is gonna be Addie's room.
I am blind.
I think you're really gonna like it.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I know this road is there for me.
First night here, but Amy seems cool.
The ways down by the river. I am blind, but I need not see.
I got this.
I know this road is there for me.
Okay.
If I'm really free, take me down to the river and wash me.
Being a cowboy, well, I don't know anything different. I had a very successful career. Life was fast. I was preparing physically. I wasn't doing anything mentally. And then I got hurt. I dug into mental health. I wanted to be better as a person. I start my day with a workout. I live life 8 seconds at a time. Find a place to stop and just breathe. Love your mind.
Communities along the East Coast are cleaning up after a powerful nor'easter battered the region for 3 days, killing at least one person and flooding coastal towns. Meanwhile, floodwaters are sweeping through some Arizona communities. Here are the details.
In New York City, a state of emergency was in effect Monday as heavy winds and flooding turned streets into rivers. Authorities say a 76-year-old woman was killed in Brooklyn when a solar panel broke loose in the storm, hitting her on the head. Along the Jersey Shore, emergency crews rescued stranded drivers as floodwaters overtook roads. Water levels Monday afternoon were forecast to reach the 2 most severe flooding stages. The National Weather Service warned of widespread roadway flooding and closures. In Delaware, powerful waves chewed away at dunes and sent water surging into coastal neighborhoods. Voluntary evacuation orders were issued for parts of Bowers Beach as residents watched the shoreline vanish.
You're looking at what the storm took away yesterday afternoon and yesterday evening. All these tree roots were under sand and dirt at the time before the storm.
Thousands of flights were delayed or canceled at airports across the Northeast. Meanwhile, heavy rain and fierce winds have battered Arizona, flooding streets and leaving residential areas looking like rivers. In Tempe, officials say a powerful thunderstorm moved through neighborhoods yesterday, severely damaging several apartment buildings and displacing at least 130 people. Rescuers say one man died after his truck was swept away by floodwaters. The storm left tens of thousands without power and forced temporary closures at sites like the Phoenix Zoo.
While the East Coast faces floodwaters and heavy surf, communities thousands of miles away in western Alaska are also in crisis. The remnants of Typhoon Halong have left 2 coastal villages in what officials are calling absolute devastation. The storm swept homes off their foundations and left at least 1 person dead and 2 missing. Alaska state troopers say they rescued more than 50 people in coastal villages on Monday. Some locals say the storm was the worst they had ever seen. Alaska senators say they will push for more disaster recovery and climate resilience funding. The Department of Homeland Security says cartels are placing bounties on ICE and border agents. Thousands of dollars are being offered, but the U.S. says it's not backing down in its enforcement operations. DHS said today it has obtained credible intelligence that Mexican cartels and criminals are involved. Criminal networks are allegedly instructing street gangs in Chicago to monitor, track, harass, and assassinate federal agents. Bounties range from $2,000 for doxing an agent, up to $10,000 for a kidnapping, and up to $50,000 for assassinating high-ranking officials. According to Homeland Security, Antifa groups in Portland and Chicago have been shielding cartel-linked individuals from deportation. Secretary Kristi Noem said U.S. agents are facing ambushes, surveillance, and death threats. But she also said, quote, "We will not back down from these threats, and every criminal, terrorist, and illegal aliens will face American justice." Attorney General Pam Bondi says Facebook has removed a page used to dox ICE agents in Chicago. She says social media campaigns are driving a wave of violence. Bondi took to X, posting, quote, "The Department of Justice will continue engaging tech companies to eliminate platforms where radicals can incite imminent violence against federal law enforcement. A spokesperson for Facebook parent company Meta confirmed the move, saying the page violated its policies. Doxing involves posting personal information about an individual for the purpose of harassment or intimidation. Such information includes names, photographs, addresses, phone numbers, and other identifying information. Apple earlier this month removed apps that allowed users to track the movement of ICE agents following pressure from the Trump administration. Google has also made similar apps unavailable. Homeland Security personnel have arrested more than 1,500 illegal immigrants in Illinois. The department said pedophiles, gang members, and armed robbers were among those arrested. DHS posted on X, quote, Operation Midway Blitz is making Illinois safe again. Launched last month, the department says the operation is targeting criminal illegal immigrants in Illinois. DHS cited what it called sanctuary policies under Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. Jurisdictions following sanctuary policies prohibit local officials from enforcing immigration laws and complying with federal authorities. Trump has deployed the National Guard to Illinois, but is facing legal challenges. An appeals court ruled that the administration can federalize National Guard troops in Illinois. However, the court also ruled that Trump cannot deploy them in Chicago while the appeals process continues. And President Trump welcoming Argentinian President Milei at the White House and endorsing him for re-election, and the president issuing a new warning to Hamas. We now go live to NTD's Washington correspondent Mari Otsu at the White House. Mari, good afternoon. So talk to us here. What is the latest from President Trump's meeting with Milei?
Don, good afternoon. It was a very warm exchange between President Milei of Argentina and our president today in the cabinet room here at the White House. President Trump is saying that he fully endorses President Milei for re-election, and in return, President Milei is praising President Trump for the Gaza ceasefire plan, and he also is nominating President Trump with a gold-framed letter for the Nobel Peace Prize. This meeting is coming as the United States just last week finalized a $20 billion economic rescue plan to support Milei's reform agenda and to stabilize the Argentinian peso. This is before Argentina's midterm elections happen on October 26th. The president says that this rescue package is about, quote, helping our neighbors. Take a look.
Helping a great philosophy take over a great country. Argentina is one of the most beautiful countries that I've ever seen. And we want to see it succeed. It's very simple. If Argentina does well, you're going to have others following, and a lot of others are following.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio also adds that Argentina is foremost among several Latin American countries that have, quote, aligned with the United States on issue after issue. And Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says that Milei is fighting, quote, 100 years of bad economic history and policy, and that the U.S. will not ignore its allies. Meanwhile, in the same meeting, President Trump now has this warning for Hamas. Take a look.
And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. And it'll happen quickly and perhaps violently. But they will disarm. Do you understand me?
Yes.
Because everyone says, oh, well, they won't disarm. They will disarm. And I spoke to Hamas, and I said, you're going to disarm, right? Yes, sir, we're going to disarm. That's what they told me. They will disarm, or we will disarm them.
President Trump also says that he wants back all of the deceased hostages that are being held in Gaza, and that he believes that the disarming of Hamas will happen in a, quote, reasonable period of time. Don, back to you.
All right, Mari, thank you. What is President Trump's overall approach to peace on the world stage? How does it differ from previous administrations? We discuss this after the break. Britain expects to see the full plans before approval of a huge proposed Chinese embassy in London after China previously supplied blueprints with areas blacked out. Critics in both the UK and the US have repeatedly warned the site could be used as a Chinese spy base. We have that and more after this break.
During high school, I hung with the wrong crowd and I never graduated.
I helped Santiago in many different ways, like all fathers do, because he always wanted to go to college.
I felt a little embarrassed to come back to school, but eventually, once I came here, I knew that it's for a bigger goal.
He was very dedicated, hardworking. He connected with his teachers. He connected with other students. That was one of the key reasons why he was able to keep forging ahead.
It was amazing to see him graduate. This was one thing that meant so much to him, and of course, it meant so much to us too.
With the help of my father and having my son, that was all the motivation that I needed. That support is everything.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A historic peace deal in the Middle East has been brokered by President Trump and his administration. Joining us to discuss is Taylor Hathorn, visiting fellow at the Independent Women's Forum Center for American Safety and Security. So good afternoon to you, Taylor. Can we start with your comments? Good to see you, Taylor. How would you characterize the president's overall approach to peace on the world stage?
The president has been very consistent in his approach to world peace on the world stage, and it really is this mindset of peace through strength. And I believe that he definitely showed that over the last 48 hours.
And what would you say sets Trump's approach apart from previous administrations?
Trump is a realist. He knows what it's going to take to get the deal done. As one of your previous guests stated, he wrote the book, The Art of the Deal, and he really applies this principle in all that he does in foreign policy. I think it's really important to note that something that this administration is doing very well, that other administrations in the past kind of have fallen short, is that they are using real world practical approaches to policy solutions. And you're seeing that play out very effectively.
And how is the current administration impacting America's legacy? How is it perceived on the global stage?
You and I have talked about this before. I grew up in the Middle East. I grew up overseas, and I was there during the President Obama's years. And it was a little difficult taking foreign policy classes and international relations classes at that time, because it really felt like America had no real direction, no way forward in the leadership that we were having on the global stage. And I really feel like President Trump is coming back to the table. He's bringing everyone together and saying, the United States is in the driver's seat, and we are leading these initiatives, but we want the entire world, especially in the Middle East, having leadership and representatives from the Middle East involved in the Gazan peace deal in the process, is to make sure that they have a role and that they are involved in this process, which is incredibly important in making sure that that peace is sustained.
How would you say authoritarian regimes have reacted to Trump's peace through strength approach so far?
I remember during the first Trump administration when he went over to visit with the North Korean leadership, and everyone was just, dismayed that he would make such a decision. They really thought that we were going to go into World War III, that it was going to be the end. But I think Trump has really shown that he knows how to handle people like this. He knows how to work with them. He knows how to deal with them, because he is not a dictator. He is someone who listens to the needs and the wants of the other side. it is not just foot stomping what the United States wants. It is really leading peace through strength and showing people what can be possible if we work together as a greater world.
So peace through strength, and America first, right? That's Trump's policy, and it doesn't mean America alone. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important. I think that a lot of people who are anti-President Trump and anti this admin are saying, well, they're isolating us. We're becoming isolationists. And I don't think that that could be further from the truth. Just look at the way that we're working with NATO, how our NATO allies are starting to spend more money to make sure that our collective protections are being held up, that we are supporting each other, that we are working with our allies. The president has had, I believe, over $17 trillion worth of investment in the United States in 8 months alone, compared to the $1 trillion of investment during the Biden administration. So I definitely think it shows that America is on the path to working with other countries, to rebuilding our legacy, to rebuilding our footing in the global stage. And we're not becoming isolationists. You would not see that investment otherwise. You would not see NATO nations coming to the table this way. And you would not see and hear the praise that President Trump is getting from world leaders around the world right now.
So Taylor, looking back, we can see the relationships perhaps changing or evolving in front of our eyes. Can you speak to in what ways has he reshaped alliances or international relationships?
I don't think years ago any of us would have ever imagined, President Trump receiving praise about Machado getting a Nobel Peace Prize and him getting that prize dedicated to him, or a figure of him being put on a beach in Israel. I don't think we would have seen this stuff or imagine we would have seen this. So I really think that he is coming forward with a very different approach this administration, where he's listening. He's hired the right people. Secretary Rubio, as President Trump mentioned in his speech to the Knesset, he is going to go down as the greatest Secretary of State in history. And I completely agree with that, because of the way that this administration is leading. They are focusing on relationships. They don't want the United States to do it alone, but they are very clear that we can if we have to. That is just not our preference.
Do you think his approach, President Trump's approach, could serve as a potential model for future administrations?
I think it has to. I think anyone who is looking at this, left, right, or center, I think you've got to look at this environment and say, this is working, and what we have done before was not working. And President Trump himself cannot be the only factor that makes that successful. We have to look at what is happening and analyze it and really see what we're going to move forward with as a country in the years to come, whether the next administration is a Vance administration or whomever might be at that seat. We really have to look at the successes here and say that this is not just an anomaly solely because President Trump is in that seat. As great as he is and as good of a job as he's doing, we've got to be able to replicate that. And I think that this old world view of all of these Harvard and Georgetown foreign policy institutions, where we do everything by a book and a certain prescription, is clearly not working. And it hasn't worked since probably the Reagan administration, because even Ronald Reagan handled things very differently than we have the last 30, 40 years. So I think we really have to be able to look at that and replicate what we want to moving forward.
Okay, Taylor, just one final question. Do you think Trump's leadership has reinforced and solidified America's position as a global leader?
I do. I think his speech at the United Nations really brought home that the United Nations and the member states really need to step up what the United Nations needs to do and the role that they need to play. I mean, President Trump has now solved 9 conflicts in an 8-month or 9-month presidency, whereas these conflicts had been going on for decades. And he came in and said, this is inefficient, this is ineffective, we don't need to do this anymore. But he really called on the United Nations to step up. The United States spends roughly $13 billion a year of our taxpayer dollars funding the United Nations. And you really have to wonder what their effectiveness and their efficiency has been. And I think Trump has definitely brought that to attention and asked or caused people to ask themselves the role that they play in the United Nations, the role that the United Nations is going to play on a global scale, and the role that Trump and the United States of America are going to play in that organization as well.
Okay, well, Taylor, well said. It's good to see you again. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
And now we're joined by Nathan Wooster. national political reporter for the Epoch Times, and he is joining us from Washington, D.C., where he's been covering the government shutdown from his vantage point on Capitol Hill. So, Nathan, we're now 2 weeks into the lapse of federal funding, and Mike Johnson, the House Speaker, has suggested the standoff could become one of the longest in history. I mean, are there signs at all that anyone is budging?
Well, the short answer is no. It really seems as though we're at a point where, in the words of Hakeem Jeffries, the House Minority Leader, there has been radio silence from Republicans after that meeting just ahead of the shutdown at the White House. And on the other hand, you have Republicans saying that Democrats simply won't negotiate in what they consider to be good faith. They really just want to get what they call a clean, continuing resolution across the line, whereas Democrats are hoping to negotiate something over these expiring ACA or Obamacare premium insurance subsidies.
So, Nathan, what are the big dividing lines currently between Democrats and Republicans when it comes to the funding bill?
Well, I mentioned them just a moment ago, the ACA subsidies. And Speaker Johnson will say that the expiration really only becomes an issue at the end of the year. He has stressed, including today at a press conference with other Republican leaders, that there can be negotiations. In fact, there are solutions, he says, that can be arrived at, but that will have to come after the shutdown ends. So you have Republicans still with a pretty unified message on this front. There's some deviations, notably Marjorie Taylor Greene has voiced concern about the expiring premiums. On the other hand, you have Democrats who believe that as soon as November 1st, when some notices begin to come out, and indeed some people may already be receiving notices, many Americans will face much higher premiums, may face issues with healthcare that they didn't before. And so they feel that this issue has to be forced. It should be noted, in fairness to the Republicans, that the alternative Democratic measure wouldn't just target ACA subsidies. It would also target other elements of healthcare spending that were cut through the One Big Beautiful Bill earlier this year, with a total price tag of $1.5 trillion.
So why has Speaker Johnson kept the House out of session then?
This is something that the press has given him some grief about, asked, well, while you're saying that we need to be getting these things done, like appropriations and other measures through regular order, why are you keeping the House out of session? And I think really it comes down to the fact that this is a negotiating tactic. This is a means of applying pressure. And the government is shut down, so that might well limit what can be done. It's interesting, Johnson has said that there were, and perhaps still are, negotiations, maybe informal talks that have been going on certainly before the shutdown across the aisle between Democrats and Republicans over some of these vexed issues over healthcare spending. But again, at the moment, it seems as though, despite the fact that there are some lawmakers on the Republican and Democratic side who may be engaged in some informal conversations, there's not a great deal of talking going on. I think right now we're looking at a pretty strong, still standoff.
Right, and as you know, the Trump administration has taken steps to pay the military during this government shutdown. What specifically did they do, and has anyone challenged it?
So they have, according to reporting, moved about $8 billion that would have been used for research and development, but that was unobligated. And of course, they maintain that this is something that's within their power to do. Indeed, on some related rescissions issues, the Supreme Court recently ruled in favor of the administration. But at the same time, you have Democrats, as well as the Cato Institute, challenging the legality of such a move, arguing that it might actually encroach on the Congress's constitutional authority, their power of the purse. And I personally had a chance to ask Speaker Johnson about those objections earlier today. He told me that not only is it something that should be in the president's authority, but if Democrats want to raise a legal challenge, want to raise an issue over military service members being paid, they can bring it. I think the perception there is that it would be a losing issue. For me, what is interesting is if other federal law enforcement, such as, for example, Immigration and Customs Enforcement or ICE, if their paychecks end up being drawn out of some of these unobligated funds, that might be an easier issue for the Democrats politically. So could we perhaps see some challenges over that? Time will tell.
So Speaker Johnson brought up a Nobel Peace Prize nomination for President Trump during today's press conference. What do you have to say about that?
Yes, this was an announcement at the start of the press conference. he and the Speaker of the Israeli Knesset are apparently going to be embarking on an effort rallying parliaments and other political leaders across the planet to try to convince them that, based upon the phase one of this Israeli-Hamas deal, we've seen the release of hostages, not all of them, or not all of even the bodies of deceased hostages, but large-scale hostage release. And of course, this comes alongside other things that Trump has done over the past few months. As your previous guest pointed out, negotiating or being heavily involved in many deals to end or at least de-escalate conflicts around the planet. This has set the stage for a lot of people now to be asking why he is not a contender at this point to be a recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. Although I have to say, some people, at least looking at the responses to some of my own social media tweets about this, would raise the question, is this even an award that people should be seeking anymore? Is it something that has lost some of its luster?
So you said earlier there's no signs that perhaps either side could be budging. Should I just not hope at all that today's Senate vote could go any differently?
Well, you know, what's the old expression that things happen very slowly until they happen very quickly? I think that it could well be the case that there are, if not enough votes to swing it, those 5 necessary votes to overcome a potential filibuster and hit 60, but maybe 1 or 2 other Democrats swinging. Perhaps the thing to look out for here would be something that we've seen previously on the Senate floor. Mike Rounds of South Dakota and other lawmakers were having some sort of a meeting on the floor. This was earlier in the shutdown. Perhaps we'll see something that looks like negotiations of that sort taking place, but yes, I wouldn't necessarily be expecting the government to reopen after today. Although, as Mark Wayne Mullen of Oklahoma posted, this could all be over in 5 minutes. We could actually see the passage of this CR. Though, if I were to bet on this, I would not bet on it happening tonight. I'll put it that way.
Okay, so Nathan, final question. And you said that Republicans need 5 votes. Are there any lawmakers worth watching in the days and perhaps weeks ahead?
Yes, so there are a few who have been of interest, I would say, multiple lawmakers who may be up for re-election in 2026. You know, for various reasons, they might want to be cognizant of the fact that if this shutdown goes on long enough, it could start to look bad for them. And then we have lawmakers who are retiring or who are otherwise known for a somewhat more moderate stance. I mentioned Mike Rounds, for example, the Republican from South Dakota, who has been involved in at least some negotiations, has spoken to reporters. You also have Jeanne Shaheen. She's a Democrat from New Hampshire who has said some interesting things, has spoken about the need, for example, in her view, to negotiate something ahead of that November 1st deadline. I suppose the question is whether she could be persuaded to change her vote while getting some guarantees of negotiations between the end of the shutdown, if the shutdown ends before November 1st, and that date. But again, I think there's a good reason to be pessimistic that we're going to see a resolution today.
Well, okay. Despite that, it's still good to talk to you today. Nathan, thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Don.
Ukraine is reportedly revoking the citizenship of the mayor of Odessa, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is set to meet with President Trump in Washington on Friday. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pasdar has the Ukraine update.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky reportedly revoked the citizenship of Odessa Mayor Hennady Trukhanov. That's according to a source familiar with the matter. Zelensky says that the Russian citizenship of certain individuals has been confirmed. Relevant decisions have been prepared regarding them. The decree has been signed, but he didn't publish any names. Trukhanov has previously denied holding Russian citizenship. The allegation has caused problems throughout his political career. Ukraine prohibits its citizens from also holding Russian citizenship. And the Kremlin says it welcomes President Trump's desire to focus on the search for a peace deal to end the fighting in Ukraine.
We certainly welcome such intentions, and we welcome the confirmation of the political will to do everything possible to promote the search for peaceful solutions.
This comes as Zelensky is set to meet with Trump in Washington on Friday. Zelensky is expected to ask for Tomahawk missiles. The request comes as European military aid for Kiev dropped. Zelensky is asking foreign countries to provide more air defense systems. He says Russia strikes power plants, power lines and natural gas facilities. The strikes are believed to be part of a campaign to disable Ukraine's power supply. This denies civilians heat and running water during the bitter winter. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Home kitchens in Washington state have become volunteer bakeries churning out loaves of bread. They're part of a project called Community Loaves, which works to provide food for people in need. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more on their mission.
Home baker Cheryl Ewaldson has baked nearly 800 loaves of bread in just 2 years. Not because she loves carbs, but to help her neighbors. Her oven creations become donations.
I liked Community Loaves because it's the opportunity for me to bake something and to share something with others in the community where they don't necessarily need to know who I am, but they know that there's a community that loves and cares for them.
Former culinary school dean Catherine Curley is the founder of Community Loaves. She started the organization in Seattle when the pandemic hit in 2020.
I was home, displaced from my own work, and loved to bake. And just an idea sparked, would it be possible for us to help from our home get important, valuable nutrition to our food banks?
Since then, the initiative has grown into a network of nearly 900 volunteer bakers. They're spread out across Washington, Oregon, California, and Idaho. According to Curley, Community Loaves has already donated more than 220,000 loaves since its founding.
It makes us feel like we're becoming a bit of a supplier to that emergency food system, and it's all on volunteer power.
Community Loaves expects to keep baking, filling bread baskets for families in need. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
A 2,300-pound pumpkin took top prize at the 52nd World Championship Pumpkin Weight-Off in Northern California yesterday.
I'm not a professional farmer. I work at Rivian as an engineer in manufacturing engineering, so I work on electric vehicles as my day job and grow pumpkins as a hobby. I was in this position last year, but I lost by 6 pounds. This year was able to take the win, and that's really what the goal was this year, was to win one of the best, if not the best, pumpkin weigh-offs in the world.
That pumpkin is massive, and it comes at a similar weight to a smaller sedan or a large bison, just for perspective for you guys. Dawson says he has been growing giant pumpkins for 5 years. He's saying that precision skills required at his job helped him with the right watering and sunlight for his pumpkin to grow. The pumpkin champ also claimed the $20,000 prize for growing his champion gourd. President Trump will soon participate in a ceremony at the White House to honor the late Charlie Kirk with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Stay with us.
If joint pain from aging is slowing you down, Omega XL can help you get back in the saddle, just like it did for John Walsh.
Today I'm here at my ranch exercising some of my polo ponies. Got to be really fit to ride these horses. So as you get older, it gets tougher. I was starting to suffer some of that business, and then I ran into somebody who said, look, you should try Omega XL, and look what it's done. I feel better than I felt in the last 30 years.
I'm Reve Walsh. I'm John Walsh's wife. I ride fox hunters, and sometimes I'm in the saddle for 3-5 hours at a time. A lot of work out here.
I wouldn't have been able to do this. Muck a stall, throw hay, do all the things that needs to be done on a ranch a couple years ago. But Omega XL gave me the ability to get back in the saddle. It works great.
Once you try it, you don't want to be without it. Makes a huge difference.
It does. Take it every single day, and you know, there's a benefit. It's made you a lot nicer to me.
If you've been living with pain, it's time to get this special offer, the Omega XL, the joint health supplement that millions have trusted for more than 20 years. Omega XL, it's sourced from the green-lipped mussel, exclusively found in the pristine waters of New Zealand, some of the cleanest waters on Earth. Omega XL, it's natural, drug-free, and it's backed by more than 40 years of clinical research that show it really works. Try Omega XL today. Pick up your phone and call the number at the bottom of your screen right now for a special offer. Buy one, get two free. 2 bottles of Omega XL plus Vitamin XL D3, a value of more than $100. But call today and you pay only $39.95. That's a savings of more than 60%. Plus, it's backed by our 60-day money-back guarantee.
Try it. You got nothing to lose.
Call or go online right now to get this special offer. 2 bottles of Omega XL plus Vitamin XL D3 for only $39.95. Call now.
Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. President Trump will participate in a ceremony at the White House to honor the late Charlie Kirk with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The U.S. and China imposing new port fees on each other today. That's as the U.S. is working to encourage more domestic shipbuilding. President Donald Trump meets with Argentina's President Javier Milei at the White House. President Trump answers questions from reporters and on Argentina's upcoming election. The Trump administration will use tariff revenue to keep the Women, Infant, and Children Supplemental Nutrition Program afloat during the shutdown. Democrats maintain they will continue to vote to keep the shutdown unless their demands are met. The FBI has brought down a criminal empire. Details on the global human trafficking and cyber fraud network that has been brought down. U.S. Homeland Security says cartels are placing bounties on ICE and federal agents, and up to $50,000 is being offered. But Kristi Noem says the U.S. will not back down.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Thank you for staying with us. President Trump welcoming Argentinian President Milei at the White House and endorsing him for re-election. And the president issuing a new warning to Hamas. NTD's Washington correspondent Mari Otsu has more on the latest from President Trump's meeting with Milei.
Don, good afternoon. It was a very warm exchange between President Milei of Argentina and our president today in the cabinet room here at the White House. President Trump is saying that he fully endorses President Milei for re-election, and in return, President Milei is praising President Trump for the Gaza ceasefire plan, and he also is nominating President Trump with a gold-framed letter for the Nobel Peace Prize. This meeting is coming as the United States just last week finalized a $20 billion economic rescue plan to support Milei's reform agenda and to stabilize the Argentinian peso. This is before Argentina's midterm elections happen on October 26th. The president says that this rescue package is about, quote, helping our neighbors. Take a look.
Helping a great philosophy take over a great country. Argentina is one of the most beautiful countries that I've ever seen. And we want to see it succeed. It's very simple. If Argentina does well, you're going to have others following, and a lot of others are following.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio also adds that Argentina is foremost among several Latin American countries that have, quote, aligned with the United States on issue after issue. And Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says that Milei is fighting, quote, 100 years of bad economic history and policy, and that the U.S. will not ignore its allies. Meanwhile, in the same meeting, President Trump now has this warning for Hamas. Take a look.
And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. And it'll happen quickly and perhaps violently. But they will disarm. Do you understand me?
Yes.
Because you always, everyone says, oh, well, they won't disarm. They will disarm. And I spoke to Hamas, and I said, you're going to disarm, right? Yes, sir, we're going to disarm. That's what they told me. They will disarm, or we will disarm them.
President Trump also says that he wants back all of the deceased hostages that are being held in Gaza and that he believes that the disarming of Hamas will happen in a, quote, reasonable period of time. Don, back to you.
All right, Mari, thank you. The Supreme Court has turned away a petition from Colorado parents whose children were secretly given gender identity instruction. 3 of the justices agreed that a petition to reconsider should not have been granted. But they expressed concern about some federal courts avoiding contentious constitutional questions, like whether a school district violates parental rights when, without their knowledge or consent, it encourages a student's gender transition or assists in the process. Court documents show that in this case, 2 students went to a meeting that discussed gender identity and included warnings about telling parents about the discussions. The Senate will vote yet again on proposals to reopen the government. Republicans warn that the Democrats' refusal to compromise could make this the longest shutdown in history. Our Washington correspondent Luis Eduardo Martinez has more from Capitol Hill.
It seems like Groundhog Day on Capitol Hill. The Senate will vote for an 8th time on proposals to reopen government. The Republican House-passed bill simply seeks to extend current levels of government funding, while a Democratic proposal would add $1.5 trillion of government spending to extend COVID-era healthcare tax credits.
We did not load up the temporary funding bill with any Republican priorities or partisan priorities at all. I don't have anything that I can take off of that document to make it more palatable.
Around 4,000 federal employees will be terminated by reductions in force. Democratic senators from Maryland and Virginia, where thousands of federal employees live, maintain that their healthcare policy demands must be met for the government to reopen.
And we know that when we support our federal employees, we are supporting every American.
We can do both. Let's get the government reopened. Let's stop this healthcare crisis cliff and make sure these federal workers get back pay.
The White House will use research and development funds from the Department of War to pay active duty military personnel. And it will use also tariff revenue to keep the Women, Infant, and Children Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program afloat during the shutdown.
We are grateful that the White House has made available this week indicates that it may be about $300 million. And if that's correct, we think that's about 2 weeks of benefits on average if it's equally distributed across states.
Air traffic controllers and thousands of essential federal employees will miss their first paycheck this week.
I have to pay my mortgage payment. I need to provide for my family. I think any time that you have to go without a paycheck, there's a certain level of stress that comes with that.
And this introduces a new risk to aviation. Air traffic controllers are supposed to mitigate risk. Air traffic controllers ensure that risk is out of the system so that those who fly and those who we serve, that they are safe. And this brings a risk where their focus is now on, when I get off my shift today, do I have to go and drive Uber tonight?
The longer the shutdown continues, the fewer options the White House will have to keep essential personnel paid and important welfare programs like WIC afloat during the government shutdown. Republicans are bracing for what could become the longest ever government shutdown in U.S. history. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
President Trump will posthumously award the Presidential Medal of Freedom to Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk at the White House soon. Kirk's wife, Erica, will accept the nation's highest civilian honor on his behalf. Kirk was assassinated last month during an event at Utah Valley University. President Trump credited the father of 2 with helping energize young voters and playing a key role in his 2024 campaign victory. The president called Kirk a champion of liberty and a giant of his generation. The medal ceremony coincides with what would have been Kirk's 32nd birthday. President Trump is expected to award the Presidential Medal of Freedom posthumously to conservative leader Charlie Kirk. Joining us to discuss is Terry Schilling, president of the American Principles Project, and Mike Sorelli, retired U.S. Navy SEAL and Chief Talent Officer of Overwatch Mission Critical. So first of all, good afternoon to you both. Good to see you. Terry, I'll start with you today. So really hoping for an in-depth discussion here. And as you know, Trump rushed back from the Middle East after a historic peace deal, right, just one day earlier. So Terry, you knew Kirk on a personal and as well professional level. How do you think he might have, how do you think he would have responded to this award?
Well, thanks so much for having me. Look, Charlie, I got to know Charlie through the Lincoln Fellowship at the Claremont Institute. We spent 10 days in Las Vegas together, and this is during the COVID shutdown, and how I tell it is Charlie didn't drink or gamble, and I lost all of my money in the first day. So we got to spend a lot of time together, and I'll tell you that Charlie was one of the most generous and humble people I've ever met. I went into this fellowship very skeptical about him. There was a lot of hype around him, but by the end of the fellowship, I was telling him that when he ran for president, I would be leaving my job to come work for him to help get him elected. He was a brilliant man, a good man, and a generous man, and he was humble. So I think getting this award today, I think he would be saying, no, give it to my wife, Erica. She deserves it more.
Huh. That's interesting. So Mike, can you talk to us about how you view this event, the significance here, especially on Charlie's birthday and as part of a newly declared National Day of Remembrance?
Yeah, first, Terry, my condolences on the loss of an amazing man. He was close to you, and that still kills me to hear that. But there is so much significance behind giving this to Charlie in the wake of the aftermath of his assassination. And while we are honoring the man, very much so, this is a signal, not a political signal, but a message to America, a proclamation that, debate is democracy and suppression is tyranny. And so it was vital that President Trump not only honor, Charlie and what Charlie would have wanted, the greater message that we still need to stand in the public arena, have the courage to debate, to defend democracy, and to elevate national dialogue. And that's why I think it's so significant in this period.
So Terry, Mike was talking about the message here. Can we get your comments on that as well? What message does this send to the nation?
Well, listen, I've been saying for the longest time, ever since this happened, that Charlie was our generation's MLK, right? And what I meant by that is that Charlie was leading not a civil rights fight, but he was leading a return of America back to those three central principles, which are God, family, and country, and loving those things, sacrifice for those things, looking to the future. So in a lot of ways, Charlie was larger than life. He represented something much bigger than civil rights or anything. He represented what America is. It's good. It's a nation that is about honoring God, serving your family, and also ultimately serving your family, and willing to be able to be courageous enough to put your life on the line for our rights. And because of that, I think that out of all the political martyrs out there, I think Charlie Kirk is right up there with MLK and RFK and JFK and all of those greats that died for something bigger than themselves.
So Mike, what do you think it is about Charlie that makes him deserving of the nation's highest civilian award?
Well, if we look at the why behind Charlie Kirk, I mean, look at his accomplishments and all by a very young age. Let's look at the moral courage. I've been on the battlefield, and that takes physical courage. Charlie had something in spades that I don't have. He had the courage to stand in front of a crowd with a very different opinion and engage them in dialogue. And that takes a lot of courage. I often think that moral courage is greater than physical courage. Here's the other thing. You can't deny, and to Terry's point, he mobilized the largest youth movement into civics in modern political history. And President Trump knows that. He played a large part in getting President Trump elected through the youth vote. No one's been able to do that, to Terry's point, since MLK or RFK. And Charlie had that charisma. People gravitated towards him. And, the respect he showed for even the people that had a dissenting point of view on these campus visits, the guy was a class act. And all he wanted to do was have a debate and maybe exchange ideas and agree to disagree. And he ended up being killed for it.
So Terry, you mentioned that he's our generation's MLK, and MLK did also receive the award. So in your view, what makes it about Charlie that he can be spoken in the same light as other people that has been awarded this honor?
Well, look, we all are made by God. We're all children of His, and He makes us all for a purpose, makes us all for a specific time. And we either step up to do the job that He put us on this earth to do, or we don't. And I think what God put Charlie on this earth to do was to return young men back to greatness, right? This is a nation not of fearful men, but of courageous men. Men who loved God, who feared losing God, who loved their families and worked very hard for them, and also served their country. And if you look at what Charlie Kirk did, was he was leading a revival amongst American men to become strong again, to become great again, to look out for their fellow man again, and to start families, to start a real legacy, right? That's what a family ultimately is. It's your legacy that you leave behind. But Charlie was there fulfilling the purpose that God put him on this earth to do, which was to revive the American family, revive a love of God, family, and country. And so I think because of that, because he stepped into the breach, and became a martyr for it, I think he's right up there in filling the needs of our time.
So, Mike, Charlie had a big influence on young people in America, young men. In a sense, you could sort of say this award also recognizes Charlie's push to help them. Can you give us your thoughts on this?
Well, it's interesting that you say the youth, that he had a big influence on the youth. Charlie was... I'm sorry, was he 31 or he was either 31 or 32? I knew this.
He's turning 32
47.
today. Would have
32 today. Thank you. I watched his material. I was shocked by how he could recite biblical verses, not knowing or prepped on what the opponent on the other side of the microphone was going to say. He didn't influence just the youth; he influenced Americans. That's what he did regardless of age. So, you look at why this medal is given, and it's the highest award given to American civilians, is he defended liberty, he elevated national dialogue, and he just spoke the values. Terry made a very good point. This award is about a statement of values, a return to the Christian values upon which this nation was founded. And we have far deviated from those Christian values. Faith, family, country, devotion to community and doing the right thing. And that is why it's so significant and on his 32nd birthday that he's receiving this. But more so, I think the biggest fear of a lot of us was that this would be in the headlines, his assassination for about 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and then people would start to forget. And I think President Trump, with his timeliness on this, is making sure that this stays in the headlines as it should, because we should not allow this assassination, and he is now a martyr, to go forgotten. We need to return to the ability to have respectful dialogue, to agree to disagree, but ultimately find solutions for which this nation could move forward. And that's what Charlie Kirk was about.
Okay, so Terry, can we get your response to what Mike said? And he mentioned the faith aspect as well.
Look, I too was blown away by Charlie's memory and his ability to recite. He had, Bible verses, but also our founding fathers and the Federalist Papers. He absolutely had a photographic memory, and it was very admirable. I think that one of his other lasting legacies is, I think it's exactly right that he was not just about the youth. I looked at him as like a mentor, and he's 8 years younger than me. He coached a lot of people. He had an impact on so many people's lives. You talk to some of the pastors that knew Charlie, and they will tell you that he taught them things, right? This is the thing about when you really give yourself to God and allow him to use you for the purposes he's designed you to fulfill, is you end up impacting things a lot greater than even you could possibly imagine. So I think that ultimately at the heart of what Charlie was standing for was getting people back to God. And you do that by returning to a love of country, returning to a love of family, and prioritizing that. And that all brings you to God. I think these things are all symbiotic. I think they feed off each other. And they're important. It's ultimately piety. Piety is the belief, or it's a love for your God, family, and country. And those are the three things that can never be repaid, right? How do you repay your country for the opportunities they've given you? How do you repay your parents for what they've given you in your life? And how do you repay God for giving you your life at all? You can't. You can just do your best to pay them all back and to make things even. But even the most amount of work you could possibly imagine isn't enough to repay all those things.
So, Mike, why is it that we cannot separate faith from the discussion when we're talking about Charlie Kirk and his legacy? And what do you think about the rise in faith-related activity since Charlie's passing?
He is definitely, and Terry alluded to this, a revival to Christ, and you've seen it. I can only speak from how I personally felt the day this happened and the days after. I mean, gut-wrenching. Didn't sleep. I was just torn apart that a man who was just simply speaking truth, and nobody like Charlie had the ability to recall facts, data, to refute the other side. But I think it's natural that when something like this happens, you grab your wife, you grab your children, you pull them closer to you, and you pray to God, and you ask for guidance. And that's the power of Charlie, even in death, is he stopped a nation and made us all probably reflect with God and ask for answers, and also commit to being part of the solution moving forward. Again, you go back to this medal. This medal is reserved for people who also shape culture. And Charlie's fingerprint will forever now be on the culture of America moving forward. And I think because of his sacrifice, we will see better days as a nation that is divisive at best right now. But I think it's a clarion call of, hey, we've got to figure this out, because violence is never the answer here home domestically.
So Terry, Mike was talking about, perhaps we're in a nation that's seeing some sort of divide. Do you think commemorating Kirk's legacy could push the dial toward a culture where we can have more free and open dialogue in debate and in America?
Well, I think Mike's exactly right. I think that ultimately this is a huge opportunity to have a very real conversation with Americans. Who do we want to be as a nation? Do we want to be a nation where people are shot cold, dead in the street, in the public, because they're espousing political opinions that we disagree with? I don't think anyone wants that, really. You have to be incredibly radicalized to have a position like that. But I also think that it opens up the conversation to talk about how radical the Democrats have gotten, right? And that's not just my opinion. You look at the public polling out there, and huge amounts of Democrats, 25, 26% in some polls, say that political violence is sometimes necessary in America. What type of future are we building, right? What are the messages that we're telling Democrat-based voters about their political opponents, that they think it's okay to kill them? Right? This is totally crazy, but we've got to move on. We've got to get back to our founding principles, which are God, family, country, but also the fact that we have human dignity, that we're all children of God, that because we are children of God, that we have inalienable rights, the right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. But included in that is the right to free speech, the right to freedom of religion, right to practice religion wherever and whenever you want. Right? We're seeing the left attack all of the institutions that made America great. And my only hope is that if we can keep exposing the radical nature of the Democrats' new policy agenda that goes to war with freedom of speech, war with freedom of religion, all of these things that have been central to the founding of our country, I hope and I believe that we will bring more and more people over to the Republican Party and to the conservative movement. It's either, America's either going to survive or it's not. And it's only going to survive if the people that support freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom of religion, all of that, if we're allowed to organize and we're allowed to have power in this country. If we don't, and we give we hand the reins of power over to the 1619 party that thinks that America was a mistake, well, America won't last very long at all.
So as we're speaking, we're seeing footage of attendees gradually arriving at this newly renovated Rose Garden. So Mike, can we get your thoughts on how optimistic are you that this event will push the dial towards a more, free and open America in terms of dialogue and debate?
I think we're continuing the legacy of Charlie through this ceremony and his memory and what he stood for, ultimately what he was trying to achieve. But here's where I'm going to agree with Terry. Now, we're walking on eggshells here. We want that nation where we can have that open dialogue and agree to disagree, but ultimately try to find a solution that we can both, find decent to whatever problem we're trying to solve. But you can't ignore what Terry was pointing to, the radical left. He brought up a word, dignity, which I'm going to say decency. Is at the end of the day, we should all aim to be decent, dignified people. The response we saw on social media from the left in the wake of the death of a father and a husband was atrocious. I mean, absolutely disgusting. I did not think humans were capable or lacked the common sense not to post something like that, but they did it in volume, hundreds of thousands, if not millions. That's a lack of decency, and that's what we need to return to. And the values between both parties are wildly different. If 26% of the Democratic Party thinks violence is an acceptable means, I'm going to tell them they have never seen true violence. They've not seen the battlefields of Iraq or Afghanistan or Somalia like I have. And Terry is right. We don't want that coming to America. I've got children. I want them to live in a safe environment where they especially have no fear for what they say. So where I'm going with this is ultimately we will have to exercise those extremist groups and the influences funding them, exercise them through the law and in the justice system, and sort of sever that funding to these extremist groups and these paid protesters that are blocking agencies like ICE from doing their job. And that is where the stark difference is. But it has to be removed. Or it has to be mitigated, because 26% of the Democratic Party that thinks violence is okay is way too high of a number.
So Terry, I was looking into the news relating to this event today, and I came across a New York Times article. It had this line saying that Charlie Kirk's rhetoric is divisive, and critics would argue that paying tribute to him may amplify that, something along those lines. Can we get your response, Terry?
Well, look, I would argue, I would tell anyone that says that Charlie's rhetoric was divisive to really watch him. Listen to how he deals with people that are very confrontational, that are very antagonistic, that are trying to accuse him of everything under the sun. And look at how calm he is. Look at his actual words. Read his actual words, right? Here's a man who says that children shouldn't get sex change procedures, that men can't become women, that men shouldn't be in girls' sports. He says that race should not be a consideration when it comes to employment or many other factors, right? Like, these are the things that MLK built his legacy on, right? These are the things that America built its legacy on, is freedom of association, freedom of speech, liberty, right? And common sense. Right, Charlie didn't have a single ounce of malintent or divisiveness. Anyone that is trying to say that what Charlie was advocating for is divisive, they're the divisive ones, right? They are the ones that are trying to make him an untouchable, to where he's inflammatory. And the reality is he's a John the Baptist type figure. He's proclaiming truth. He's proclaiming common sense, and he was doing that on the most embattled playing field that the Democrats have, which is our university system. He was going into the belly of the beast and having conversations with people. To say that that's divisive is just absolutely preposterous. And I would encourage anyone that thinks that he was divisive to actually listen to his words, read what he wrote, and then listen to your family members, listen to your friends from back home and what they think, because I guarantee that Charlie Kirk agrees with almost all of what they hold to be true.
Okay, and we're seeing on the footage that Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio has arrived at the event, who of which Charlie Kirk had personal relationships with. So, Mike, you heard what Terry said. Can we get your response as to what you think as well on this?
Yeah, I'm not going to debate anything that Terry said. I absolutely agree. Common sense is rather uncommon, as we say, and Terry knows that. Here's the problem I have with what Terry is saying. We live, and he knows this, we live in a social media age where people can take a quick soundbite, write copyright that is divisive, and say that Charlie Kirk said X, and that just galvanizes the party in whatever direction you want to take them. But if you do go back, like Terry mentioned, and look at what Charlie Kirk said and the way he said it. In those debates with those young college students, he always showed them respect, heard them out, which is rare. And a lot of what he fought for, similar to, and Terry said it, the MLKs and the RFKs, is very similar. But when it comes out of a mouthpiece who's from the right, all of a sudden, it's wrong. We're dealing with a party that has moral superiority. And no matter what you say, no matter how much fact, demographic data, or economic data, or history, or the Federalist Papers that Charlie could recite like that, they couldn't hear him out of the hatred alone. And that's the problem, is we have such hate for the other side that you can't listen to the words that are coming out of another person's mouth. Whenever I enter into a debate, I want to listen to the side, especially to see if there's something I can learn, or maybe there's another layer of empathy I need to have based on their experiences and why they believe in what they believe. And we've essentially, as a nation, a society, have shut that down because we either categorize people into two things. They're either blue or red, and we stop seeing them as Americans, fellow Americans at some point.
All right, so we're still waiting for President Trump to appear at this event. In the meantime, Terry, so I gave you that New York Times article. Can you talk to us about, broadly speaking, what role has the media played in some of these misrepresentations, if you will, of Charlie Kirk?
Well, I think that the legacy press is guilty on a lot of fronts of exaggerating, of creating hysteria. The legacy press has really caused a lot of damage to our country by slicing and dicing things to make their political opponents look stupid or look bigoted or hateful. You know, it's not just Charlie Kirk, it's President Trump, right? They slice and dice these clips. They make these people sound stupid. They make them sound evil. They make them sound bigoted. They do whatever they can to paint a narrative that the Republicans are the new Nazis and that Donald Trump is the new Hitler and that Charlie Kirk is one of his top foot soldiers. This is completely irresponsible. It's not what anyone supports when it comes to the media, and it's why the credibility of the legacy press has never been lower. Right? People are tuning out. They're cutting their cable. They're not watching TV anymore. They're doing streaming services. Podcasts have never been popular, and it's because people want to listen to people that they feel they can trust. Now, I'm not saying that everyone in the podcast space is only telling truth and that none of them are influenced by, you know, sponsors or political agendas or whatever. But what I'm saying is that all of this is really an indictment on the legacy press. And I do think that they created hysteria around Charlie, making him out to be a Nazi racist when the exact opposite's true. This is the guy that said big government sucks, right? The Nazis loved government. Charlie hated government. He was more libertarian than anything. But, you know, it's just part and parcel from the Democrats and their allies in the press is they're really not an independent press. They aren't interested in the facts and the truth in so many cases and situations. They're just interested in telling the narrative and shaping it towards their political ends.
So, Mike, what do you think here? What does the press need to do so that we don't have this environment where, you know, extremist rhetoric can foster, where we have more unity?
It's a great question. And actually, let me start with this. Terry had mentioned people calling the right fascists or Nazis. When it comes from the mouths of Democratic leaders, national leaders who are going to get multiple sound bites a day, you start to push your people, your party in that direction. And so, I mean, we've seen the memes of them calling Trump a Nazi and a fascist thousands and thousands of times. If people hear it enough, they start to believe it. And that comes down to the accountability, the weight of the positions that these national leaders hold. And they've got to choose their words carefully. They've got to be unifiers, not divisive leaders that push their party in a particular direction. Now, with media, where I think we're actually seeing a positive trend, I'd be interested on what Terry thinks of this, but you're even starting to see independent journalists with CNN or MSNBC starting to be a little more fair and balanced with their approach, realizing that they'd taken it to the far left spectrum and that they're starting to bring it back, one, because their ratings have dropped, their viewership has dropped, and they realized that they had gotten this wrong. But we have a serious issue with journalistic ethics and values. Again, it goes back to trust, as Terry mentioned. The second you lose the trust of your audience, it is extremely hard to gain back. It's no different than leadership and leading people. The second you violate that trust, you've lost them usually forever. So I think legacy media, which is being threatened right now, is quickly trying to do a turnaround in order not to lose their entire viewership and audience. And so I do see some positive trends in that direction. MSNBC, they'll never get it. CNN, I think you're starting to see a little bit of a turnaround.
So Terry, Mike asked you what you thought about it, and I'm wondering the same as well. Do you see legacy media, whether it's MSNBC, sort of pulling back and being more fair?
Well, I've definitely seen, at least off camera, a few situations where the legacy press or their hosts are talking more moderately. We obviously have Bill Maher, who has been calling out the Democrats for their radicalism for some time. But even just last week, Caitlin Collins came out and said was lauding President Trump for his unprecedented level of access. She said essentially that President Trump was available anytime they wanted an interview. He would sit and ask questions and answer questions left and right. And she compared that actually to Obama and how Obama as president was very protected. He was holed up, very selective about the interviews they gave. Whereas with President Trump, he'll sit down with anyone and talk about any issues. He's not afraid of the debates and of these interviews. I think that's very telling. And I do think that there has been a market shift. I think that the legacy media is not as hysterical as they were in the first Trump term. I think they've as crazy as this sounds, because they're still pretty radical, but I do think that they're not as bad as the first Trump administration and the news coverage there. I think they've toned things down. I don't know why. I think they probably are being forced to because of their lack of following. They're dropping viewership. Their ratings are all in the tanks, by the way, especially for CNN and MSNBC. But we'll have to see how this plays out long term. I certainly hope that this is a long term adjustment for the Democrats and the legacy press.
So, Mike, as you know, Erica Kirk will be accepting the award, the Medal of Freedom, today. And she is now the CEO of Turning Point USA. She gave a very powerful speech during that TPUSA event where she forgave Charlie Kirk's killer. Can we just talk about that for a moment? What do you think about Erica Kirk accepting the award, her as the CEO, and the speech she gave?
Yeah, I think she would rather give up this award to have her husband back. That's first and foremost. And knowing a lot of military families who lost their loved ones, rather than receiving an award, they'd rather have their son or daughter back. So every time that Erica, who's an extremely strong woman, anyone who has the ability to forgive someone else that soon after such a violent, horrific incident is an extremely faith-based and strong individual. But you've got to also understand, as proud as she may be to receiving this award, every time she has to attend an event like this, it's like ripping a Band-Aid off in a realization that she can't turn to her husband and celebrate this moment with him, although he's looking down from above.
And Terry, I was telling the exact same sentiment that Mike expressed during the time of her speech. I was saying to my guests that if I were in her shoes, I honestly doubt that I will be able to forgive the killer. I mean, we can talk about it maybe a decade later from the actual event, but she did it in less than 2 weeks. Terry, just talk about that with us.
It's incredible, isn't it? I mean, it's not explicable, right? This is not a natural feeling. This is a supernatural feeling. I think that the only thing that could actually explain this is the Holy Spirit, right? And look, I knew Charlie. He was the real deal. This wasn't, a lights and smoke show. This was this was real. He really was a Christian. He really did strive to get closer to God every single day. And he married someone that was helping him on that journey, which says a lot about her, right? I mean, the whole point of getting married in the Christian world is to get you and your spouse to heaven. And because of that dynamic, and if you take marriage seriously as a Christian, you got to marry someone that can fight with you, right? That can keep up spiritually. But I think obviously the Holy Spirit was involved. I think Erica and Charlie were both actual Christians who really believed the faith. But I think there was something very powerful along with the forgiveness that Erica offered, which is she pointed out that Charlie's entire mission at Turning Point was to help save guys like his assassin. This assassin was caught up in the incel community online, got indoctrinated, got brainwashed, wasn't really living for anything. He didn't have a family. He wasn't going to church on Sunday. He had lost all those things and was seeking fulfillment everywhere else. Charlie was trying to save those people, which makes his assassination by this kid so ironic and so terrible, is that this was the kid that Charlie was actually trying to serve and to save and to bring to Christ. And unfortunately, for this killer, he's going to spend a lot of time in jail, possibly get the death penalty. But there's a huge movement now because of what Charlie did and because of what he built. And because of the way that they took him out. So this is going to live on longer. I absolutely think the Holy Spirit is involved here. You know, the other thing that Erica said was in her first speech after he was killed was, our God is so good. I mean, think of the courage you would have to have in order to do that, say that.
All right, as you can hear the music, President Trump is arriving at this event. So we're going to tune in to that for now, and we'll potentially speak to you guys later.
Thank you very much, everybody. Please, this is such an honor. This is the, please be seated. This is the first time we've been at the new and improved Rose Garden, and people are loving it. They're loving it like they've not loved a lot of things. We have the Presidential Walk of Fame, which you just saw, and it just opened, and we wanted to get it open for this occasion. We were hoping we were able to get outside, and the weather allowed us to. It was supposed to be a terrible rainy day. I was telling Eric, and God was watching, and he didn't want that for Charlie. He just didn't want that. So it's really beautiful. It couldn't be more beautiful. Today we're here to honor and remember a fearless warrior for liberty, beloved leader who galvanized the next generation like nobody I've ever seen before, and an American patriot of the deepest conviction, the finest quality and the highest caliber, the late, great Charlie Kirk. Five weeks ago, our nation was robbed of this extraordinary champion. He was a champion in every way. I got to know him so well. He didn't like losing. And he was able to fight people that were enemies, and he didn't necessarily love those enemies so much. You know, I heard he loved his enemies, and I said, wait a minute, is that the same Charlie that I know? I'm not sure, but I didn't want to get into it. But it was a horrible, heinous, demonic act of murder. He was assassinated in the prime of his life for boldly speaking the truth, for living his faith and relentlessly fighting for a better and stronger America. He loved this country. And that's why this afternoon it's my privilege to posthumously award Charles James Kirk our nation's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Thank you. As you know, only hours ago I returned from a very historic trip to secure peace in the Middle East. People said that couldn't be done. Charlie felt it could be done. Charlie felt it could be done. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. But I raced back halfway around the globe. I was going to call Erica and say, Erica, could you maybe move it to Friday. And I didn't have the courage to call. But you know why I didn't call? Because I heard today was Charlie's birthday. And I said, that was a definite. And I said, we're going to have to forget about some of those very big, very rich countries that expected me to be there. And I can tell you, based on the length of that flight, I wouldn't want to go back tomorrow. But I would not have missed this moment for anything in the world. Nothing. And it's a very important time for our country, and our country is doing so well. It's never done better. We are a country with almost now $18 trillion of investment coming in. Nobody's ever seen anything like that. Previous administration had less than $1 trillion for 4 years. We have more than 18, it'll be much more than 20 by the time the year, more than $20 trillion. There's never been a country in the world that had anything like that. What's happened to our country is incredible in a short period of time. Charlie was a big person for, sir, can we close up those borders, please, a little bit? They're really leaking badly. I said, Charlie, I haven't gotten there yet. But, it came out the last 4 months. Literally nobody was allowed into our country. And the only people that were allowed in were people that came in legally. The borders are absolutely stone cold closed. And they reported 0, 0, 0, and 0, so that's pretty good. But he was a big believer. He wanted people in the country more than I did, frankly. He wanted them to come in legally, and he got his wish. October 14th is Charlie's birthday, and he should have been turning 32 years old. I tell you, when I first met him, he was like 22, and I said, boy, he's awfully young, but I thought he was older than that, He looked a little bit older than his age. That's okay, That's not good when you're old, but when you're young, it's great. He had the best of all things, but he was special. But instead, Charlie is attaining a far more important milestone. We're entering his name forever into the eternal roster of true American heroes. He's a true American hero, an amazing person, way, way beyond his years. And I'm honored to be joined by a woman who has endured unspeakable hardship with unbelievable strength, and that's Charlie's widow, Erica. And I just want to thank you, Erica. He loved you so much. I was with him. Oh, please. Thank you, darling. Thank you. I was with him before I met Erica, and he told me he was going to get married. He said, you won't believe how beautiful she is. I said, well, then now that I meet her, he's right. But then he also said, and you know what? She's like the smartest person I know. See, they do go together on occasion. Not often. Not often. But on occasion they go together. But he was in love with you. He was deeply in love with you. It's great. Erica, your love and courage have been an inspiration to all of us, and we will always be here for you, and we're always going to be here for your gorgeous, beautiful children, and we'll never forget what your family has sacrificed for our country. Man loved our country. When things were going badly for our country, he was so, as you know, angry. He would get angry because he said it doesn't have to be that way. We're also pleased to be joined by an incredible group of Charlie's friends, very powerful friends, actually, and some not so powerful, and they're actually better people, okay? I know them all. They're the less powerful ones. I have to tell you that, all of you power guys down here. The best ones in the group are the ones that are less successful, but that happens too. No, they're all great, and they're here. And let's start with Erica's father. Where is Erica's father? Where are you? Where are you, Dad? Oh, look at him. Wow. I want to get a hat like that, too. I like that. How are you? Nice to see you again. Thanks as well to Vice President J.D. Vance, who's been fantastic. J.D., thank you very much. Great. Doing a great job. Did a great job on Sunday with George Slopadopoulos. He put him away pretty good. Second lady, who's a phenomenal woman, Usha Vance. Thank you very much, Usha. Thank you very much. Great woman. President of Argentina. He wanted to be here. That's Argentina's a serious flight, right? And he's become a superstar, and he's doing amazing things. He's a MAGA person, but it's make Argentina great again. That's what he does, right? And I want you to stand, please, Javier Milei. Doing a great job. Thank you very much. Many members of my cabinet are here, just about all of them are here. I won't go into every single one of them, but I'll announce a few of the people that have really turned this country around and helped me. Incredible people. Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. Where is Mike? Mike, what a job you're doing, Mike. What a job you're doing. And I watched you this morning, and you're in there trying to say, look, just let the country open. Everything will be fine. We're dealing with some radical left lunatics. And I just wish Charlie was here to fight us. I think the fight would have been over already. He would have had a march on the Capitol by people whose average age is about 21, because there's nobody that had that relationship with young people. Right, Mike? So thank you, Mike, for being here. House Majority Leader Steve Scalise. Steve, thank you very much. A brave guy and a friend. House Majority Whip, another terrific man, Tom Emmer. Thank you, Tom. Senate Majority Whip, John Barrasso. John, thank you very much. You have all these senators. I'm going to get in trouble. I'm not going to read all their names. I'll be reading all day. We'll be talking about Charlie in about 45 minutes from now. We can't do that. So all of the senators, there's so many of you, thank you very much. I do want to thank Senator Thune for doing a terrific job. He's really been leading properly. Do you agree, Mike? The team, the two of these guys have been fantastic. So to Senator Thune, I want to thank you very much. Incredible job. I watched him this morning, and he was out there pounding them this morning on television, too. And John Barrasso, thank you for the work you've done, and congratulations on your success. But I want to thank you all and all of the Congress people that are here. And I see we have our Attorney General here, and you are doing a fantastic job. Thank you very much, Pam. Thank you. Thank you very much. We have everybody. Wow, that's incredible. Okay, I'm not going to do any more. I'm going to be here too long, but I just want to thank you. Have given him such support, but he always gave you such support. That's why you're here. And very unusual. Charles James Kirk was a visionary and one of the greatest figures of his generation. He was truly an amazing figure and growing leaps and bounds. He knew that the fight to preserve our heritage is waged not only on the battlefield and in the halls of power, of which we have tremendous power here, including the head of a place called war. We call it now war. We had defense. We had our Secretary of Defense. Now we have a Secretary of War. And somehow I think it's more emblematic, and hopefully we'll never have to use war. But the fact that we're ready is very good. Peace through strength is very important. But also in the hearts of our nation's youth, that's where Charlie rode strongest. At age 18, that insight inspired Charlie to found the organization that ultimately touched the lives of millions and millions of people, and so many young people that nobody's ever seen anything like it, frankly. Turning Point USA. It's amazing. And it's actually bigger now. It's become bigger in the last few weeks than Charlie ever thought. I think his end vision in many years from now would have been just a fraction of what it turned out to be in a couple of weeks, right? It's amazing. With hard work and joyful spirit and endless enthusiasm and determination. And he did have great enthusiasm. I always say you need enthusiasm to be successful. He had enthusiasm. Charlie grew Turning Point into the largest conservative youth organization in the entire country. He forged a personal bond with countless young conservatives. He fought for free speech, religious liberty, strong borders, and a very strong and proud America. In everything he did, he put America first. He really put America first. And ultimately, Charlie became more than a leader of an important organization. He became the leader of historic movements all over the country. There were movements, individual movements, one movement. but it was historic. Everything he did was historic, and a true evangelist for the cause of freedom and the word of Almighty God. God was very important to Charlie. He would say, you know, if you don't have religion, you're not going to have a strong country. It's true. He was so wise beyond his years. You know, I talk to him sometimes and say, this guy is like a young guy. He was really a wise man. From the time Charlie worked on my presidential campaign in 2016, and he was there right from the beginning. He liked me. I don't know. I have no idea. What the hell was he thinking? He said, you're going to win, sir. I said, you know, I'm running against 17 senators and a lot of tough people and governors. We have all these people. And he said, no, you're going to win, sir. He said, not going to be close. And he made it happen. He helped make it happen. I'll tell you that. Without him, who knows what would be. Maybe you'd have Kamala standing here today. That would not be good. I will tell you, Javier, you don't know who Kamala is. Promise. It would not be good. You agree with that, Howard? He also mobilized countless citizens to go vote. It's called Go Vote. Very simple. And with his help in 2024, we won more young people than any Republican by far in the history of our country. And we won the popular vote. We won the swing. 7 of them. Remember, they said, oh, well, if Trump could win 4, that would be nice. I win 7 by a lot, by a landslide. But the popular vote was massive. And we won the Electoral College. Remember, they said it's going to be very hard. I'd say 270. Well, we got 312 to 226. And then we won something called districts and councils and different things. But in one case, we won 2,750 to 525. That's the one where you see the map is almost entirely red, except they have a little blue line on one side and a little blue line, meaning New York and Los Angeles. I have a feeling that if the vote were 100%, we would have won that too. You want to know the truth. But he knew, and he knew very well, and he also understood honesty, and he was always concerned with honesty. He said the only way we can lose is if the cheating gets so bad, and that's where we came up with a little phrase, too big to rig. We said, go out and vote. Just go out and vote. And we had that. Remember, we used to say that all the time because people would say, oh, they're going to win. We don't have to vote. Let's go to a movie. We'll come home and watch later. And he wasn't about that. So we come up to, really together, we came up with that phrase. We got to make it too big. I never made a speech where I didn't say at the end, now look, the polls are showing good. Don't believe the polls. He said, we're going to make it, Susie, right? Too big to rig. So if you think we're going to win by a lot, doesn't matter. Pretend we're losing. You got to go out and vote. They voted. And at 9:02, the whole thing was over, right? 9:02. Remember they said, oh, this could go a few days. Well, it went a few minutes. 9:02. And he knew that. And I felt it, but he knew it. He knew it. I think he knew it more than anybody. But Charlie never missed an opportunity to remind us of the Judeo-Christian principles of our nation's founding or to share his deep Christian faith. In his final moments, Charlie testified to the greatness of America and to the glory of our Savior, with whom he now rests in heaven. And he is going to make heaven. I said, I'm not sure I can make it, but he's going to make it. He's there. He's looking down on us right now. It's so incredible. Look at this, how this turned out. This was supposed to be so dark and cloudy. Not dark and cloudy, is it? Look at that, how beautiful that is. There's no artist that can capture it as beautiful as it is today. Wow, it's amazing. As I said, on the day that he was assassinated, Charlie Kirk was a martyr for truth and for freedom. And from Socrates to think, and to St. Peter, from Abraham Lincoln to Martin Luther King, those who change history the most, and he really did, have always risked their lives for causes they were put on earth to defend. He was put on earth to do exactly what he was doing. He didn't want to waste time. He would have been a top student at any college in the country. I know the college as well. He's smarter than the guys there. He was so smart. But he almost, I guess, didn't have the time. He knew what he wanted to do. It wasn't like, gee, I want to sit in the classroom for 4 years listening to people teach me liberal principles, because they were never going to teach him that anyway. But he didn't have the time. He really didn't have the time. But every time the enemies of goodness and virtue tried to silence the voice of righteous and noble leaders like Charlie, they failed. They seem to fail. Ultimately, they look like they're doing well, and then they end up failing because the truth has been unrelenting over the years, over history. And people like Charlie, it's just they've got a power that others don't have and very few people will ever have. So today, like those martyrs before him, Charlie's voice, his message, and his legacy are stronger and greater than ever before. They are greater than ever before. Look, this is a horrible event, but it brought out the greatness of Charlie. Nothing could have ever supplanted this. It's incredible, the way people are talking about him. And with great love. I mean, I read so many stories about some of the enemies, but I watch the enemies, and it's hard for them to speak badly about him because they just don't. And then you do have people in the days since Charlie's killing, we've seen exactly why our country so dearly needed his example. We've watched legions of far-left radicals resort to desperate acts of violence and terror because they know that their ideas and arguments are persuading no one. They know that they're failing. They have the devil's ideology, and they're failing, and they know it. They feel it, and they become violent. They seem to become very violent on the left. They've rammed vehicles into federal law enforcement, fired sniper rifles at ICE agents, and me, But I made a turn at a good time. I turned to the right. Charlie couldn't believe it, actually. He said, "How the hell did you make that turn?" I said, "I don't know." But fired rifles and threatened the lives of our Supreme Court justices, our great justices. They have to be protected. We just issued a lot of money, $60 million, to protect the Supreme Court justices. Very important. We can't let anything happen. In places of worship, we're protecting our people. We've seen that a candidate for Attorney General in Virginia boasted that he would want to see the Republican legislature, a legislator in Virginia, shot in the head and to see his children murdered. He actually said this. And now he continues to run for office, and most people continue to back him, but he said he wants his man shot. He said shot in the head and to see his children murdered. And they keep running. Pretty amazing, right? That's a bad one. Let's see how that turns out, but that's a really bad one. Nobody's heard that one before. Especially in the wake of Charlie's assassination, our country must have absolutely no tolerance for this radical left violence, extremism, and terror. We're done with the angry mobs, and we're not going to let our cities be unsafe. We're going to make sure our cities are safe. When you have Chicago, where they had 4,000 people murdered over a very short period of time, 4,000 people. And then we have a governor stand up and say, oh, things are going swimmingly. No, they're not. We're going to make Chicago safe, just like we're going to make, look what we did in D.C. It's so nice that we started here because this was one of the most violent places in the United States. It'd be dangerous to be right out here. But you couldn't go to a restaurant. The restaurants were all dying. The whole place was dying. You'd have these gorgeous, look at the Washington Monument over there. You'd have these gorgeous buildings and monuments and structures. And people were afraid to leave their apartment. They were afraid to go to work. They'd get into an Uber and they'd feel safe, and then the Uber would be attacked. They thought they made it to safety, and then the Uber was attacked on the trip in. But we've done a great job, and now it's considered a totally safe city. We haven't had problems. It took us 12 days to make it great. We took out, Pam, 1,700 hard criminals, career criminals in many cases, but these are hardened criminals. Many of them came in through the Biden open borders. We brought them back to the countries. And a couple were so violent that we put them in jail. We don't want to take a chance that they could get back in, because no matter how good we do, somebody can sneak in. They were so violent and so bad. One arrested 28 times. Every time he left prison, he'd get into a violent incident. 28 times. And we put him away for a long time. But we're done with the angry mobs. We're done with it. This is such an unbelievable place right now, you take a look where you can walk down the middle of the street with your wife or your husband. Your children can walk. They can walk alone. It doesn't matter. They can walk anywhere in Washington, and they're safe now. If this were a year ago, they'd have a serious chance of being badly hurt, even killed. They'd come in from Indiana. They'd come in from Iowa. They'd come from Florida to see their nation's capital, and somebody would have to call the parents, I'm sorry, but your son or your daughter's been killed. Not anymore. You hear those sirens going off? That's good. That's a good sound. That means they either got the bad guy or they're going to stop the bad guy. You didn't hear that sound because nobody wanted to do anything. Nobody. Listen to the beauty of that sound. Seriously. And that's the real deal sirens. They're not politically correct sirens. You hear them, they're about 3 miles away. That's great. What a beautiful sound. They're stopping crime. That's what they're doing. So we're done with the voices of fools. They're fools. And death threats. And we're going to make our cities safe. And I thought it was Charlie's, one of his biggest dreams was that he couldn't believe it. Chicago's going to be a great city again. We've already, we sent people in there 6 months ago. And this governor said, well, crime is down. Yeah, that's because we had the FBI in there for 6 months. Just preparing it for the bigger surge. And they've done a great job, the cash and the FBI. They've done a great job. And they love doing it, They love being able to do it. They were restricted from doing it. They couldn't do anything. And now they're totally unrestricted. All they have to do is stop crime. And they're doing it. By the way, Memphis, as you know, you heard they went in about a week ago. One of the most dangerous places in the country, really in the world. It's not just the country. They have very few cities that would compare to some of these cities. You go to Afghanistan, you say, oh, that's unsafe. Well, the crime numbers are much better than the crime numbers in places that we have. So Memphis, I understand, is doing unbelievably in 1 week. It's like a different place. And this took 12 days, and then after that, we just perfected it. But after 12 days, we had good safety here. After 1 month, it's like, it's really amazing. And by the way, restaurants are booming. Restaurants are opening up. The big problem we have, you can't get into a restaurant in D.C. anymore. So they're opening up. It's a beautiful thing to see. It's called safety. It's called law enforcement and letting them do their job. And that's why I said last month that I have directed the Attorney General and the Department of Homeland Security to confront the very real threat of left-wing terrorism in our country. It's a real threat. And not when you confront it, it's not, because they're not brave people. In fact, they're cowards. When you confront them, they immediately fold. You have to see them fold. You have to see them crying. They fold. But it includes dismantling the networks that fund them and finance them, and we're finding out who those networks are. We already know quite a few of them. When you see these violent incidents and then you see people holding this gorgeous sign with beautiful wood, beautiful cardboard, wood, everything's perfect paint job, and they're all the same. There are thousands of them. You know that they weren't made in the basement out of love. They were made by anarchists. And in some cases, wealthy. I'll probably find some of my nice friends that are up there being so nice to me, especially lately. They're being very nice. But it surprises you who they may be. And you almost wonder why would they do it? But they're hurting our country, and we're really taking it back one by one. If we didn't go into Los Angeles early on in the administration, the commissioner, the chief of police, Los Angeles, said, if they didn't go in, we would have lost our city. Now, they already lost 25,000 houses to fire because they wouldn't let the water come in from the Pacific Northwest, which they should have done. I said, you better do it. They didn't do it, and we had 25,000 homes where they had no water in their sprinklers. They had no water in the fire hydrants. It would have been a different kind of a thing if they did what they were supposed to do. We had to break in. We broke in and had the water come down. They said for the environment, great, they lost 25,000 houses. It's incredible. But the commissioner said without the federal government and President Trump's intervention, we would have lost the entire city. And we have the Olympics going there soon. I got the Olympics. We have the Olympics. We have the World Cup. And we have, most importantly, we have the 250th anniversary of our country. That's going to be most important. And all of these things are happening. And we're going to have safe cities. We're going to have very, very safe cities. So 1 month after Charlie's death, we still feel the terrible shock and the pain of his loss, like just about nobody I can think of. Charlie Kirk was one of a kind. He was unstoppable. And he really was. Boy, when he had an idea in his head, he would call me, "Sir, please, you haven't done it yet." I said, "Charlie, relax. Just relax." He didn't relax. He'd call me the next day again. It got it done. But he was like indomitable and always will be. He's really irreplaceable. Nobody going to replace him. But they're going to do great. But you can't replace that kind of person and that kind of talent, frankly. The word talent is an important word, but that kind of talent. So we hold his memory in our hearts forever. Every single day of this administration, we will continue to carry out the mission for which he lived, and he really did. He lived for this country. He lived for his wife and his family, but he lived for this country too. In Charlie's honor, we will continue like we have been to fight, 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 and to win, win, win. We're going to win so much. So the Presidential Medal of Freedom is a big deal. You have the Congressional Medal of Honor, military, and the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which is civilian. And the Presidential Medal of Freedom is a really big deal. Very few people get it. Very few people, frankly, qualify. It's a decision of the president, but it's a qualification that's a very hard one to get. And I would like to ask, if I might, the military aide to read Charles James Kirk's citation for the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Thank you very much. Thank you.
The Presidential Medal of Freedom is awarded to Charles James Kirk. Accepting on behalf of Charlie is his wife, Mrs. Erica Kirk. Charlie Kirk was one of the most influential American political figures of his generation. At just 18 years old, he founded Turning Point USA and grew it into the largest conservative youth organization in the nation. For over a decade, he tirelessly traveled the country, leading a movement to restore respect for our founding principles, reawaken our national identity, and inspire a renewed spirit of religious devotion. He was one of the great debaters and communicators of his time. Despite receiving repeated threats, he remained undeterred and modeled courage, logic, humor, and grace to the next generation. On September 10th, 2025, at age 31, Charlie Kirk was assassinated while addressing a group of students. The United States honors him as a martyr for truth and freedom.
Thank you, Mr. President, for honoring my husband in such a profound and meaningful way. And thank you for making this event a priority amid the peace process in the Middle East. Thank you. Very grateful. Charlie always admired your commitment to freedom, and that's something that both of you shared. So thank you. Your support of our family and the work that Charlie devoted his life to will be something I cherish forever, so thank you. To our gracious First Lady in her office for making this event possible, thank you as well. It's beautiful. To Vice President and the lovely Usha Vance, your friendship has been an unbelievable encouragement. Thank you. And to all our friends and family that are here and watching from all around the world, thank you for loving us. Thank you for praying for us and for believing in what Charlie believed in. And to our Turning Point USA staff and the Charlie Kirk Show staff, we love you more than you could ever know. And to the Turning Point USA chapters that are watching all across America right now, you are the heartbeat of this future and of this movement. Everything that Charlie built, you guys are the legacy holders of that. You are living proof that his mission did not die with him. It lives through you. And Charlie always said the next generation will decide whether freedom endures. And because of you, I know that freedom will endure. It will. And today we're gathered not only to celebrate Charlie's birthday, but to honor a truth that he gave his entire life to defend, and that's freedom. The very existence of the Presidential Medal of Freedom reminds us that the national interest of the United States has always been freedom. Our founders etched it into the preamble of our Constitution, and those words are not relics on parchment. They are a living covenant. The blessings of liberty are not man's invention, they are God's endowment. Charlie lived for those blessings, not as abstract words, but as sacred promises. He used to love to journal about this topic all the time, and with such a heart postured of gratitude. And he believed that liberty was both a right and a responsibility. And he used to say, freedom is the ability to do what is right without fear. And that's how he lived. He was free from fear. He was free from compromise, free from anything that could enslave his soul. His name, Charles, literally means free man. And that's exactly who my husband was. He was a free man. And from the time I met him, sitting across from him, being interviewed on politics and philosophy and theology, anything that Charlie loved, any topic he loved. And I just saw the fire in his soul, and there was this divine restlessness within him that came from knowing God placed him on this earth to protect something very, very sacred for all of us. And he never stopped fighting for people to experience freedom. He didn't. Charlie often said that without God, freedom becomes chaos. And he believed liberty could only survive when anchored to truth. And I remember in one of his speeches, he told the audience that the opposite of liberty isn't law. He said it's captivity. And that the freest people in the world are those whose hearts belong to Christ. But what's so powerful is that Charlie had the ability to communicate so brilliantly across all generations. And he reminded us that in a world that tells us freedom is doing whatever you want to do, the real freedom is the power to live freely and to do what is right. And in one of his journal entries, he wrote that he wanted everyone to know that you can't have liberty without moral responsibility. Freedom divorced from faith eventually just destroys itself. And what's so fascinating about all of this is looking back these past 12 years of Turning Point USA and his mission, there's almost this veil of sacredness. Because what I realize is that while he was building an organization, he was also building a movement, one that called people back to God, back to truth, and a movement that was filled with courage. And ironically, for a man who impacted millions, Charlie never desired to be the center of attention. He just wasn't. My husband was not a man of extravagance. He loved simple but deeply meaningful things, truly. He loved his late night walks. He loved buying more books than he could ever read because he felt there was no such thing as a book budget. And he loved being able to read to our kids the same bedtime story on repeat because he knew it was their favorite. But to him, that was special. And he loved to sit in the sun on a Saturday morning with his cup of decaf coffee, and his phone was off because he was honoring the Sabbath. And for him, it was that moment to catch his breath and just be in peace because he was unreachable at the moment. And he preferred quiet birthdays. But that never stopped me from telling him. I told him every single year, I said, baby, I love your birthday. I said, because it's the day that God knew the world couldn't go another day without you. And so the rhythm of our usual birthday celebration for him was mint ice cream, mint chocolate chip ice cream. He only had it twice a year, on his birthday and 4th of July. It's just, and then after that, it was back to work as usual. But last year, his one birthday wish was to see the Oregon Ducks play the Ohio State. And they won. Oregon won that night. And it was by far one of the most memorable nights of his birthday experience of his life until today. And so, honestly, President Trump, I have spent 7.5 years trying to find the perfect birthday gift for Charlie. And it's so difficult. And those of you that have spouses or loved ones, you know how difficult it is sometimes to buy a gift for someone that you love, because he wasn't a materialistic man, so that also did not help. But now I can say with confidence, Mr. President, that you have given him the best birthday gift he could ever have. It's such an honor and the recognition of a life lived for defending freedom. And that's what Charlie fought for until his last breath. And it was written across his chest in those final moments on one of his simple t-shirts that always carried a message, and this one bearing a single word, freedom. That was the banner over his life, and that shirt was a declaration. The same declaration he made in every speech, every campus visit, every time he shared the gospel at a church, every sleepless night that he would spend praying for the youth of this nation and planning for the future of our country, and just impressing upon them that when we defend liberty, we defend the soul of our nation. My husband never told anyone what to say. He never did. He never told anyone what to say. He would just encourage them to think. He would encourage them to think outside of the traditional political labels. He would want them to think in a way that was anchored in wisdom and truth. But he would never tell anyone what to say. Charlie wasn't content to simply admire freedom. He wanted to multiply it. He wanted to multiply freedom. He wanted young people to taste it and to understand it and defend it. He wanted them to see that liberty isn't self-indulgence, it's self-governance under God. He wanted them to see that. And every day I'd see him getting ready for work. He'd put on his cross necklace, he'd put his ring on his finger. And the boldness in his demeanor was always fearlessness. He wasn't afraid. He was never afraid. In his daily actions, whether in office or on campus or at a church, it was always without fear. That was his creed. That is how he lived out every single day. He didn't fear being slandered. He did not. He didn't fear losing friends, I can tell you that. He didn't. He didn't care. He stood for truth and stood for freedom, and he did not, everything else was just noise to him. And it's because his confidence in Christ was absolute. That's why. There was no limit to what he would have sacrificed to defend freedom for all. And if the moment had come, he probably would have run for president, but not out of ambition. He would only have done it if that was something that he believed that his country needed from a servant's heart standpoint. And Charlie lived only 31 short years. No, he's 32, but on this side of heaven, but he lived. He lived every single second he lived. He filled every single day with purpose, and he fought for truth when it was unpopular. And he stood for God when it was costly, but that's what we're called to do. Surprisingly enough, he did pray for his enemies, which is very hard, but he did. He did. He did. No one else, I mean, I saw him do it. No, he never did it in front of anyone else, but I can attest to that. But he also loved people when it was inconvenient. And he ran his race with endurance, and he kept the faith. And now he wears the crown of a righteous martyr. And for me and for our children, the truth really studies our grief, because heaven gained what earth could no longer contain: a free man made fully free. To all watching, this is not a ceremony. This is a commissioning. And my message is simple. I want you to be the embodiment of this medal. I do. I want you to free yourself from fear. I want you to stand courageously in the truth. Listen for the still, small voice of God. And remember that while freedom is inherited in this country, each of us must be intentional stewards every single day. God began a mighty work through my husband, and I intend to see it through. And the torch is in our hands now. It's in mine, it's in yours, it's in all of yours, it's in all the students with Turning Point USA. And before I close, I'll share with you that I asked our daughter what she would like to say to Daddy for his birthday. She said, "Happy birthday, Daddy. I want to give you a stuffed animal. I want you to eat a cupcake with ice cream, and I want you to go have a birthday surprise. I love you," is what she said. And while our son, he's precious, he can't yet speak, in classic Kirk family fashion, his actions spoke louder than his words, and his gift to you, Charlie, and myself for that matter, was deciding to become the man of the house and be fully potty trained at 16 months. But Charlie, baby, I know that you're celebrating in heaven today, but gosh, I miss you. We miss you. And we love you, and we promise we'll make you proud. And Charlie's life was proof that freedom is not a theory, it's a testimony. He showed us that liberty begins not in the halls of power, but in the man of a heart surrendered to God. And so today, as we honor Charlie with this incredible Presidential Medal of Freedom on his birthday, I stand here with tears and just a humbled heart and spirit, because his story reminds us all that to live free is the greatest gift, but to die free is the greatest victory. Happy birthday, my Charlie. Happy Freedom Day. God bless you.
And you're just watching now President Trump honoring the late Charlie Kirk with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And giving a heartfelt speech was Erica Kirk accepting the medal. She said, "This would have been the best birthday present for Charlie," and tearing up as well when talking about her kids. Now, don't go away. We have more news right after this break.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our biggest 3-in-1 sale ever with a limited edition product, a back-in-stock special, and a closeout deal you won't find anywhere else. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get our MyPillow bed sheets, only $29.88. Any color, any style, any size, even kings, regular $119.98, only $29.88. Once they're gone for good. How about our My Towels? They're finally back in stock, but not for long. Get a 6-piece My Towel set, regular $69.98, now only $39.98. And for the first time and the only time ever, get our limited edition premium My Pillows. They're made with Giza cotton and designer gusset. Queen $17.98, Kings only $19.98. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get the best offers ever. Quantities are extremely limited, so order now.
I didn't ask to lose my mother or to be abused at 5 years old. I didn't ask to be kicked out of my house with nowhere to go. I didn't ask for any of this. But I did ask for help, and Covenant House was there. Thanks to their love and support, and to generous people like you, I got what I needed to take control of my life.
For the young people who didn't ask to be put in unthinkable situations, Covenant House is there providing safety, hope, and a brighter future. Call or go online now. For a gift of only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can provide hot meals, safe shelter, medical care, and love to more than 2,000 young people who sleep at a Covenant House every night. 1 in 10 young adults will experience homelessness this year. Your gift can help reach them when they need it most.
I didn't ask for my parents and my family to disown me. I didn't ask to end up in a homeless shelter. The beauty of it all is that I found Covenant House.
The need is overwhelming. But your monthly support will make sure no young person is ever turned away. Call or go online right now to safeplacetosleep.org with your gift of just $19 a month. With your monthly donation, you'll receive this soft, comforting blanket as a reminder of the warmth and safety your gift will provide a young person tonight.
Covenant House really helped me and really helped mold me into the woman I am today. If there's no Covenant House, where would I be today?
Your monthly gift is urgently needed to reach young people in communities like yours who didn't ask to be put in unthinkable situations. Show them they're loved and not alone. Call the number on your screen or go online to safeplacetosleep.org.
Earlier, President Trump said Washington is considering terminating some trade ties with China, including those related to cooking oil. On his Truth Social account, he wrote, "I believe that China purposefully not buying our soybeans and causing difficulty for our soybean farmers is an economically hostile act. We are considering terminating business with China having to do with cooking oil and other elements of trade as retribution. As an example, we can easily produce cooking oil ourselves. We don't need to purchase it from China." President Trump welcoming Argentinian President Milei at the White House and endorsing him for re-election. And the president issuing a warning to Hamas. NTD's Washington correspondent Mariotsu has more on the latest from President Trump's meeting with Milei.
Don, good afternoon. It was a very warm exchange between President Milei of Argentina and our president today in the cabinet room here at the White House. President Trump is saying that he fully endorses President Milei for re-election, and in return, President Milei is praising President Trump for the Gaza ceasefire plan, and he also is nominating President Trump with a gold-framed letter for the Nobel Peace Prize. This meeting is coming as the United States just last week finalized a $20 billion economic rescue plan to support Milei's reform agenda and to stabilize the Argentinian peso. This is before Argentina's midterm elections happen on October 26th. The president says that this rescue package is about, quote, helping our neighbors. Take a look.
Helping a great philosophy take over a great country. Argentina is one of the most beautiful countries that I've ever seen. And we want to see it succeed. It's very simple. If Argentina does well, you're going to have others following, and a lot of others are following.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio also adds that Argentina is foremost among several Latin American countries that have, quote, aligned with the United States on issue after issue. And Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says that Milei is fighting, quote, 100 years of bad economic history and policy, and that the U.S. will not ignore its allies. Meanwhile, in the same meeting, President Trump now has this warning for Hamas. Take a look.
And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. And it'll happen quickly and perhaps violently. But they will disarm. Do you understand me?
Yes.
Because everyone says, oh, well, they won't disarm. They will disarm. And I spoke to Hamas, and I said, you're going to disarm, right? Yes, sir, we're going to disarm. That's what they told me. They will disarm, or we will disarm them.
President Trump also says that he wants back all of the deceased hostages that are being held in Gaza, and that he believes that the disarming of Hamas will happen in a, quote, reasonable period of time. Don, back to you.
All right, Mari, thank you. Joining us now to discuss is Mike Leon, NTD News contributor and host of the Can We Please Talk podcast. And we have Tony Kinnett, national correspondent at the Daily Signal and host of the Tony Kinnett Cast radio show and podcast. So good to see you guys, as always. Tony, I'll start with you because I understand you might have to go soon. So what do you think of President Trump saying that he's going to endorse Milei and that if he wins, the U.S. will stay? If his opponent wins, then the U.S. is not going to be so generous.
The old classic art of foreign policy. Good afternoon to you both. I mean, this is how I actually, as an American, am okay with the American ethos being used. Politics is not a neutral game. It's not a we're going to stay out of it kind of game. Look, the United States aid is tied to our policies. It benefits Americans more for someone who is along same philosophical principles as Americans to be endorsed, or at least to say we don't want the other guy in an election. That's not a new thing. We've been doing that since we chose not to enter the French Revolutionary decision and essentially not upset the British back in the very first term. So as far as we're looking at here with the Milei decision, kind of a mixed bag with the whole loan aspect of it. But as far as tying aid to the political decisions that Argentina is making, I'm very much for that because, if it's like a Brazilian situation where they elect a socialist, then I don't believe the United States should then be aiding the country in the same way if they had someone who was more aligned to American political philosophy.
So, Mike, what are your thoughts on this? President Trump saying that the U.S. will continue to be generous to Argentina as long as Milei is in power.
Yeah, good to see you both, as always, on this Tuesday afternoon. No shock. I mean, Javier Milei was at the inauguration for Donald Trump. I mean, he's been friends with him. He joined him on the campaign trail. I mean, Tony's right about the overarching premise of, the political relationship, whether we tie it to the aid of that country or not. I mean, again, it all depends on the economic benefits. They're not one of our top trade partners in Latin America. They're not even in the top 5 in terms of our trade partners. We're one of their top trade partners when you look at the 5 countries in the top 5 that they import and export to. So, I mean, I get that sentiment in terms of Trump saying, hey, if he's still around, for sure, yes, I will help Argentina. If he's not, I mean, I get that sentiment overall. The 25 midterm elections coming up in October 26, I should say, for Argentina will be critical to see what happens in that country. But in terms of this $20 billion currency swap, loan, whatever we want to call it, I mean, it's a mixed bag from the political messaging standpoint. You heard a reporter there ask him, how is this America first when we're bailing out Argentina? Anybody has seen the clips of Arkansas soybean farmers talking about how this is going to impact them? I don't know how I would sell it that this is America first, given for people that don't understand basic economics of what this currency swap looks like. I don't know how I would sell that. So I don't know how the president and his team are going to sell that. But I do understand when you think about the relationship that he has with Milei, make Argentina great again, and all the things that Milei has tried to, kind of impart on Argentina that has kind of mirrored or piggyback a little bit of what Trump said he was going to do on the campaign trail and what he's done so far these last 9 months.
So, Tony, can you comment on that as well, the $20 billion currency swap amid a government shutdown?
So first of all, the idea of the government shutdown is kind of a central impact on here. Some of these funds are already allotted into certain, let's say, buckets or envelopes, as it were, to disperse in the current fiscal process. But that said, as for the $20 billion, I'm a little dubious on this as well. In the same way, probably mostly the same way that Mike is. Just throwing money at a country and hoping that it sticks and that it's fine and that it's going to help. I have a bit of PTSD on that particular matter because throwing money at programs doesn't magically fix them. That said, it is also true concurrently that, the Milei government is overcoming, 80 to 120 years of really terrible back and forth circuit breaker switch flipping policies. And I get it. I get the stimulus kind of goals, the idea of growing Argentina's economy as a regional trade partner. Kind of in an Israel of the South America to kind of drive a longer term U.S. interest there. I get the appeal of it. I don't know how workable it is. And here's where I'll actually admit that my practical knowledge would end. And I'd say, well, I don't know. I had different predictions about what Trump's tariff proposals would do for the U.S. inflation rates. And those, I ended up seeing something totally different, a second or third prediction that I had kind of waiting in the wings. So here I see Scott Bessent very hesitant. You can actually tell how the Trump administration's economic policy is being carried out by how Scott starts talking. He's very hesitant here. I don't know exactly how this currency swap is going to be effectuated. I don't know if it's going to be enough to make a major tick in the Argentine stock markets and the economy itself. So I'm kind of waiting. I wouldn't say cautiously optimistic, more just cautious. I'm kind of on my tiptoes here.
So, Mike, can you comment on Trump and Milei's relationship here? How much of their ideologies are aligned?
Yeah, I mean that's the big question. I mean, Milei's a self-described, I believe, libertarian. So, would we put Trump in that libertarian category? I mean, maybe depends upon what it is that you're talking about. From that perspective, here's one thing I will say about something that Milei has done since 2023. I had to read these numbers earlier, Don, Tony, because these shocked me. when he took office in 2023, inflation was roughly 211% annually. That's as of December of 2023. This is according to BBC News. Since then, 2 years later into his administration, they've had their first fiscal surplus in the last 14 years, and inflation is down to 36%. Again, this is according to BBC News. So, I mean, the bailout part of this, right, in terms of the relationship, Don, to your question, we know why he's doing it. I just said, make Argentina great again. He's joked about that on the campaign trail. That's the slogan that he's brought upon. The chainsaw was a gift from Elon. They have a very close relationship. So he just said it in the presser. He's like, if he's not here, I'm not going to give them money. If he's here, I'm going to give them money. So I don't need to expand on the relationship beyond that. But what I will say is that, back to Tony's point about the political angle of this, right? The government shutdown is not tied to this. Tony's right. There's already funds pre-allocated for this. But the fact that on the surface, we're struggling right now with tariff policy that is having real impact in the flyover states, I hate that term, in those Rust Belt states that farmers are impacted. They're going on different platforms and saying, we can't be giving $20 billion to one of our big competitors in the soybean market. And it just looks bad on the surface. And so I come at it from a little bit of that angle. The relationship is self-explanatory. I mean, the two of them, again, one went to the other one's inauguration, and the other one just said in front of reporters and the entire cabinet that he's only going to give him money if Milei's there, and he's not going to give him money if Milei's there. And it doesn't matter if you speak English or Spanish. You could easily see that they'd have a really good relationship. But the political angle in all of this is the one that Trump has really got to pick up the pieces. And Tony's right. Scott Bessen's kind of, dancing around, maybe a little bit hesitant in terms of describing this relationship. I think that speaks volumes for sure.
Okay, Tony, I do believe you have to go soon. I mean, if you want to give a quick final thought, and then we'll let you go.
Absolutely. So the kind of core issue that I have with this is that I really don't care for the presidential purse of USAID. I said that before. I said that here on this segment before. I don't like the idea of the president of the United States kind of deciding, hey, we have this money that's set aside for me to use as an essential combative measure on the world stage. You have soft diplomacy, and then you have more heavy-handed diplomacy through the strong arm of U.S. force and diplomatic leverage. And the reason that USAID was invented was to give the president a personal bribery fund, to bribe countries to work with the United States instead of the Soviet Union. That's why it was created. USAID is shut down. I don't like that. I don't like that. Well, yeah, it may be gone, but its ghost will remain with us forever. And little private projects that do, at face value, hurt American farmers. I don't like playing around with American farmers anyway. Like, either we do subsidies or we don't. We don't provide foreign subsidies at the same time as central structured subsidies. It makes the incentive market bonkers. I think that there might be ways to, and I'll have to do research on this, there might be ways to cut regulatory action in order to incentivize regional trade and currency shoring in developing Argentine markets in order to shore up their currency long term that have previously not been available. For example, prior administrations had central restrictions on certain mountainous mining and refining. That might be something to look into. I'm just a guy from one of those corn and soybean fields in Indiana. They just picked ours this afternoon. So as far as I'm concerned, I just don't like this whole thing in general. I like Javier Milei. I get why he's doing it, like Mike said. I really don't like reviving the ghost of USAID. I just think that it needs to be put to bed and done with. The Cold War is over. I get that China is an adversary to combat them, but the throwing around the money purse just it rubs me the wrong way as a free market conservative. I don't care for it.
Well, okay, Tony, we'll let you go now, and we'll speak again next week. Thank you.
Thanks both.
Okay, so Mike, I also wanted to get your comments real quick on the Gaza peace plan as well today. So, I find it interesting that many left-leaning media outlets are reporting on this deal positively, and some would even call it rare when it comes to Trump. What do you think about all this?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a couple things, Don. First, President Biden did get 100 or so Israeli hostages out of, Hamas control, right? But was he able to negotiate something like this where it was a 20-point plan that was articulated, drafted, had other countries support and buy-in, as you saw those countries in Egypt? Did it have a future plan and state for Gaza, for people to return back to Gaza? The Palestinian prisoner exchange that happened with over 2,000 or so Palestinian prisoners. Remember, there was a lot of Palestinians that were taken and put in Israeli prisons post October 7th of 2023. So did the Biden administration do any of that? No. I mean, I hate that people can't have these two thoughts in their head at the same time, Don. Like, for me, I will always hammer President Trump on things that he is doing domestically that are potentially harming American citizens that I disagree with, whether it be things that are happening right now at DHS and what ICE is doing and becoming the largest law enforcement agency. There are a bunch of things to talk about from a domestic standpoint, deploying National Guard troops and city safety, and how do we do all that. But when it comes to this on the foreign policy stage, I think for these outlets, the president said, I can solve these wars. They wouldn't have started if I was here, which obviously is subjective. We have no idea. That's a hypothetical. We don't even know if that would have happened. But here we are now, a short, 10, 12 months later since the campaign trail, and we're seeing a ceasefire, although there's been little, let's be honest, inklings of some Israeli IDF just reporting that they shot some Palestinians this morning, according to a bunch of different outlets. So I don't know if that breaks the terms of the ceasefire. But to actually see these countries show up in Egypt yesterday, sign this peace agreement in phase 1, and now we'll see what happens in phase 2. I mean, the fact that we've gotten to this point, you can only point to one thing to give credit to. And all these outlets all said Steve Witkoff is not the guy to be able to negotiate something like this, Don, because he doesn't have this experience. He's worked in real estate. And here is Steve Witkoff bringing these parties to the table and getting this first part of phase 1 done with these Israeli hostages coming home and the Palestinian prisoners going back to Gaza. I mean, you have to give credit where credit's due sometimes, Don.
And just real quick, one final question, I think. You mentioned that Hamas went onto the streets to, execute Palestinians they claim worked with Israel. Do you think that's a red flag there in terms of lasting peace in the region? And plus the fact that Hamas has not agreed to disarm.
Yeah, I think both of those things are the thing that I've been saying the most across NTD over the last couple of days since it's been signed, right? Like phase 1, and again, I hate even saying this because of the hostages and all the turmoil they went through. Phase 1 was probably the easiest part of this, getting a negotiation and the countries to agree on prisoner swap, hostages swap, location, who's mediating that. That's the easiest part. The second part of this is there a two-state solution? Is, Gazans returning back home? What does the future of the government, in Gaza look like, right? Is it something from the West Bank? Is it something that's new to that area? And then how does Hamas ultimately disarm when the West considers Hamas a terrorist organization? Those are things we can't answer, Don, because nobody knows that. And if we did know that, this conflict would have been solved. October 7th would have never happened. All of those things. So Hamas has been in power, or at least been around since 2005, 2006. They killed leaders of the opposition party, even though they were duly elected. I mean, this has been happening for over 20 plus years. So the fact that we got phase 1 done, again, I don't want it to sound callous, because like I said, I'm incredibly sensitive of everything that the hostages have gone through and the prisoners have gone through. That was the easy part. The harder part now comes in what becomes the future state of this region without Hamas, because I can't imagine Hamas saying, yeah, you know what, we are going to disarm. Even though President Trump has said this a bunch, and I know he said the caveat, he said it in the cabinet meeting, he just said that if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. How does that look? What is that we will disarm them? Because if it's more bombing, if it's more indiscriminate killing, there's 70,000 people that have died in Gaza since this war has happened, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. To continue to indiscriminately bomb Gaza because of the Hamas militants that are there, that's not the solve for this. He wants truly everlasting peace. I don't know how we get that. I don't know how we accomplish phase 2 with Hamas in charge, Don.
Okay, well, Mike, it's always good to talk to you. And I think that's our time today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Don.
Attorney General Pam Bondi says Facebook has removed a page used to dox ICE agents in Chicago. She says social media campaigns are driving a wave of violence. Bondi took to X, posting, quote, "The Department of Justice will continue engaging tech companies to eliminate platforms where radicals can incite imminent violence against federal law enforcement. A spokesperson for Facebook parent company Meta confirmed the move, saying the page violated its policies. Doxing involves posting personal information about an individual for the purpose of harassment or intimidation. Such information includes names, photographs, addresses, phone numbers, and other identifying information. Apple earlier this month removed apps that allowed users to track the movement of ICE agents following pressure from the Trump administration. Google has also made similar apps unavailable. Homeland Security personnel have arrested more than 1,500 illegal immigrants in Illinois. The department said pedophiles, gang members, and armed robbers were among those arrested. DHS posted on X, quote, Operation Midway Blitz is making Illinois safe again. Launched last month, the department says the operation is targeting criminal illegal immigrants in Illinois. DHS cited what it called sanctuary policies under Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. Jurisdictions following sanctuary policies prohibit local officials from enforcing immigration laws and complying with federal authorities. Trump has deployed the National Guard to Illinois, but is facing legal challenges. An appeals court ruled that the administration can federalize National Guard troops in Illinois. However, the court also ruled that Trump cannot deploy them in Chicago while the appeals process continues. The Department of Homeland Security says cartels are placing bounties on ICE and border agents. Thousands of dollars are being offered, but the U.S. says it's not backing down in its enforcement operations. DHS said today it has obtained credible intelligence that Mexican cartels and criminals are involved. Criminal networks are allegedly instructing street gangs in Chicago to monitor, track, harass, and assassinate federal agents. Bounties range from $2,000 for doxing an agent, up to $10,000 for a kidnapping, and up to $50,000 for assassinating high-ranking officials. According to Homeland Security, Antifa groups in Portland and Chicago have been shielding cartel-linked individuals from deportation. Secretary Kristi Noem said U.S. agents are facing ambushes, surveillance, and death threats. But she also said, quote, we will not back down from these threats, and every criminal, terrorist, and illegal aliens will face American justice.
Is